In a future society, time travel exists, but it's only available to those with the means to pay for it on the black market. When the mob wants to eliminate someone, it sends the target into the past, where a hitman known as a looper lies in wait to finish the job. Joe is one such hired gun, and he does his job well, until the day his bosses decide to close his loop and sends Joe's future self back in time to be killed. Welcome to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature, and on this episode, we'll be covering 2012's Looper, written and directed by Rian Johnson. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another feature presentation episode. Like you heard tonight, we're going to be doing 2012's Looper by Rian Johnson. Danny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, man. What about you? It feels a little empty in here. We don't have that Australian vibe going on.
Right, yeah, no, we don't have any cool like foreign kind of we get that nice kind of like niche about us. We've got these exotic guys.
Yeah.
Now we're just like two fucking boring ass white guys in Tennessee.
hey, let's talk about movies.
Right. But yeah, I am super fucking pumped to be talking about this movie.
I can tell you've been talking to me about this movie all week.
Yeah. I've definitely, I've had my head up some time travel ass like all day and just been going to town on this movie. For one thing that I love about this episode, like you said, this is the first feature presentation that it's just been you and I on, and there's been no Australian on it. So USA! But back to the show. But yeah, I'm super excited to talk about Looper. This is our first time travel movie that we've done, which is crazy. I mean, I think our anniversary for the podcast is in like a day or two, or it might have just passed. I can't remember.
I think it's tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So yeah, it's
nice.
The 1 year anniversary since you and Zoheb started this.
Woo! Yeah, for sure. It's crazy that in that time span, though, we've never covered a time travel movie. And I was like, dude, I love the genre. Science fiction, just as a whole, but also specifically like the time travel genre.
Yeah, and I brought up Terminator when someone pointed that out. I was like, maybe not, because that's not really, you don't travel time, I guess, in the movie. So you're right. This is the first time where you see two drastically different times associated with that.
Right, yeah. Like Terminator is it's interesting you bring up Terminator because there's a lot of comparisons between Terminator and this movie. Where you've got old Joe going back in time to basically do the thing that the first Arnie, the T-1000 does in the original Terminator. But before we get into that, if you want to check us out, any of our socials, you want to find us anywhere, we're on Facebook at Midnight Double Feature. We've also got the group called the After Party. Everyone's invited to come and talk and just talk about movies, talk about whatever, talk about stuff that you're excited about.
Yeah, if you got a movie or a link to something that's coming out soon you want to post, that's usually what people end up doing a lot on there. And you get a lot of other people that interact and say, yeah, I'm looking forward to this too, or I never heard of this. There's usually a lot of funny shit, honestly, that gets posted on there. They're way funnier than we are.
Yeah. No, yeah, and it's awesome. It's a cool community. It's growing. We're still a growing podcast, so we'd love for you. If you guys are listening to this, come and be a part of that. We're also on Instagram at Midnight Double Feature. We're on Twitter at MDF Pod. You can also find us on iTunes, on YouTube, anywhere straight on our Libsyn page. But what really, really helps us out is when you guys go and review us on iTunes. Our ratings have been coming back, and they're always going higher and higher. We've had some great feedback, and I want to just keep that feedback still going. I know we all want to do, and we always appreciate what you guys have to say, and we always really look forward to those. I know I do. I'm just, when I see a new one, I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. Seeing our downloads go up, everything's just been really exciting. So just a big thank you for that, especially coming up on the year anniversary. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But Looper, I tell you what, since this is weird, this is kind of like a co-pick, because at some point I was going to pick this, I think right before it did Jumanji, and I was like, you know what, no, I'm just going to do Jumanji, I'll save Looper, and you were like, fuck that, we're doing Looper. I was like, all right, fuck it, we're doing Looper. I
knew how passionate you had been talking about it, and then, us trying to figure out everybody's schedule, that's apparent because there's only, there's an odd cast on this episode. I thought we were kind of already locked into it, and I was like, let's just go ahead and do that one because it's a good movie.
Yeah, fuck it. So I'll tell you what, why don't you just tell me about first time you saw it, what you thought of it, and what made you what made you want to go with this, even though it was like originally started off as my pick. What made you want to be like, no, let's fucking do that. Let's stick to that.
So this is my first Rian Johnson movie. I didn't even know who this was, and I would probably usually approach movies, especially when I was younger, just because maybe I saw a trailer, it looked cool, or it was associated with something I already knew. This is probably one of the first times where knowing like other info other than just like the trailer and the movie itself, like the director kind of came into play, because we're all, of course, like big Star Wars fans. They were coming out with Episode 8. That is done and had a lot of like attention around it because it was being done by Rian Johnson. I never heard of the guy. And so whenever we found out that was coming out, I simply just went on Google and was like, what other shit has this guy done? I wanted to go check it out. Right. And so Looper had, I don't remember, I think, and this could change, of course, I don't know. I think it was like a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, which like is a pretty strong score for that. And I was like, yeah. I was like, damn, all right, well, that it at least caught my attention. Not that I trust Rotten Tomatoes for everything, but it definitely made me look up the trailer and just see the cast and everything. I was like, this looks pretty cool. So we probably didn't see it until, I think, the same year The Last Jedi came out, probably a couple months or so beforehand, I would guess.
Oh, okay.
So I know that it had been out for a while, but I just kind of like, neat movies where they find a really cool way to do time travel. Sometimes it's shitty, but like in this case, it's pretty cool and it's very interesting. And the cast is actually really cool too. It's one of the movies where, I think Bruce Willis doesn't show up totally asleep at the wheel. It's like sometimes, I mean, like if you've seen some of his more recent movies and stuff, it just kind of seems like he just woke up, and he's cool to watch and everything, but it's like he's been just playing like this, like half asleep person for a while now. Nothing against him or anything, but it's just how he feels sometimes. And so it wasn't the case in this one. And I just couldn't get over how they made Joseph Gordon-Levitt look like him. Like I didn't know that they had done some stuff with that. I'm sure you might get into this a little bit. But I didn't know how they had done that, or that they'd even done it, until probably maybe 30 minutes into the movie. And I'm like reaching down for my phone and Googling like, what's up with this? And, found out some stuff I'm sure you're going to get into. And don't totally forgot that Emily Blunt was kind of like player number 3 in this. Or player number 2, I guess, depending on how you really look at the movie. So that was kind of a neat surprise. And there's some neat people that show up in this. So it's a really stellar cast. And I don't really have an issue with The Last Jedi the way that some people apparently did, which we won't get into. But so I thought he did really well in this one. Last Jedi turned out well too. So I thought that this was kind of a neat way for me to get introduced to him. And it was like kind of a more graspable time travel movie instead of like Interstellar, where they have to like convince you of this fifth dimension and everything else. So overall I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool, and whenever you picked it, I was like, yeah, let's go for it. It was a good movie. Let's do it. So you've been really excited to talk about this. So that's all we have time for. If you guys would just
now, I would like to Colin, no, come on, we gotta go.
Please quit.
Well, yeah, I can't remember exactly the first time I saw this movie. I don't really remember. I think I'm a sucker for going through like a Walmart or being at like Target and seeing some badass looking sci-fi movie that just came out on the Blu-ray DVD combo pack that's like fucking $28. And I'm like, oh god.
It's the only realistic way to relive that blockbuster nostalgia that's practically impossible to get anymore. Where you can like walk through like shelves and look at shit. Like we probably don't buy anything most of the time. We have a mantle of shit that we still need to watch. So whatever, that's fun to do. I don't care.
Oh hell yeah, dude! Like, so I went through. I've snagged up movies like this, like Kin, before that came out like last year. And
I remember you texting us about that.
Yeah, but I can't remember when I first saw this movie, but I was just blown away by it. I was like, holy shit, this is right up my fucking alley of movies. It's very visual. There's not a whole lot of backstory that's given. Stuff is kept mysterious. They're not, except for the narration, which was kind of a necessity. It's not really, they don't really beat you over the head with a lot of dialogue or some exposition scenes. And at the same time, the world building that they do is really interesting because they show you just enough, and like it's just enough to be like, whoa, wait, what's going on? And it's believable, but it's not something that you feel like that you need to dive into. But what's awesome about it is that it feels like something that you want to dive into. Like this whole world of Looper, like what is this world like that's going on? And there's time travel and these fucking guys with like revolvers that look like the fucking Quaker Oats dude running around. I'm like, what the hell is going on? But no, I thought it was a super interesting premise. Anything with time travel, you get a little fucky, man. It's a time travel movie. You've got to kind of let some stuff go. Rian Johnson said it really well. He's like, it's all really just kind of like balderdash and hypothetical. So I don't want to hear like somebody saying like, no, that's not theoretically blah, 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 blah. He's like, dude, it's a movie. You know, at some point you kind of have to let that go for the story's sake.
Yeah. I mean,
I
at
understand
this point,
that.
It's just such a never ending debate about whether anything would really be true or not. And
right, exactly.
It just takes away from the fact that it's like, hey, did you forget that you're watching a movie? Who cares?
Right, yeah, and it is super fun, dude. I have fallen down some time travel like rabbit holes of how they think it might be impossible to time travel backwards, but then also I read an article the other day that scientists have been like moving atoms backwards in time. I was like, oh shit, and then like there's cool stuff about time displacement and stuff like that. I really love. I'm a big sucker for any type of like time travel stuff. I love this. I fucking love Back to the Future. I love really any movie that's kind of centered around like time travel, like even if it's something like The fucking Time Traveler's Wife. I'm like, that sounds stupid, but now I'm kind of interested because you have time travel. Like, you fucking got me. And I think it's one of the most interesting, creative, like kind of subgenres that people don't do well a lot, but when they do get done well, they're like, oh my god, they're fucking like monumental. But no, this movie's super interesting because
I thought you were gonna be like, well, this movie's piece of shit, but
yeah, this movie's fucking piece of shit.
That, to be fair, is your reaction. I think 20% of the time. I think usually when it's not your pick, also you're like, it was okay.
Yeah, I'm like, it's all right.
By the end, you're like, oh, it wasn't that great.
I mean, I definitely got up to use the bathroom. That's a sign of a movie that I'm not like super invested in. Like if I'm like, no, I'm not getting up. I'm like, no. Like when I'm watching Looper, nah, I'm not fucking getting up. I'll piss my pants. I don't care. I'm not getting up. But no, what's cool about this movie, $30 million budget, made like $175 million at the box office, which is awesome.
Spoilers. Jeez. Yeah. You didn't get to play that game.
Oh, sorry. Dude, I haven't done that in a while, Wazohub. I need to start doing that again, actually.
That was like literally the only funny part of the episode. You guys are boring the other parts.
Well, I had to like lay low for a while, like spring him on him every once in a while. Now he never sees him coming.
You're like right in the middle of an Indiana Jones movie, and you're like, and then he falls down and says, so what's the budget? Springing on him out of nowhere.
And like fucking throw it on him. But yeah, I love this movie. I think it's great. There's some super interesting stuff that goes on behind the scenes of this, about this being much more practical than digital. All of the prosthetics on Joseph Gordon-Levitt's face are real prosthetics. Those aren't CGI. Like, they've been digitally touched up maybe a hair or two. But Rian Johnson is like, I only want visuals. He's like, or I only want physical visuals. He's like, I don't want, the quarter is actually being like manipulated on a string that's being deleted out later. Like, really cool stuff like that. Even when Joseph Gordon-Levitt falls from that from that fire escape, yeah, he is like, he's actually being dropped from like fucking 30 feet up on wires. I'm like, that's cool. That's awesome. And all in all, like this movie is super interesting because it's a true testament to like every villain is the hero of their own story. When you see Joe, you don't like, if you take into consideration what Joe believes, that now, like, yes, what he's doing to save his wife is like selfish, and that's why he's ultimately doing it. But also at the same time, this guy, like he said, there's like vagrant purges, and he started killing loopers left and right. And this kid is just, I mean, when the glimpses of the future we do see where Joe is in 2074, it's awful. And so at the same time, you can kind of understand where Joe's coming from, but he's coming at it from the wrong reason. And I just think that's super interesting. What did you think about this? The the face of Joseph Gordon-Levitt wrapped up with this whole Bruce Willis thing, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt is about 30 when they do this, and Bruce Willis I think was like 31 or 32 when they did Die Hard, and those motherfuckers look nothing alike. Like, he looks nothing like younger Bruce Willis. But like, does it take you out a lot, or is it something you just kind of accepted after a while?
There's definitely maybe one or two scenes where they're just so close to his face, and I've seen him doing movies, like other movies, for so long, and like Third Rock from the Sun, that I just know what he looks like. And whenever he has, it's almost like a silhouette of his face. You can just almost tell. It almost doesn't even look like him. So when he turns the face, you're just like, oh man, it's sometimes it's a little distracting. But like, I get that they wanted to go with him because he is incredibly entertaining to watch in it. So I totally am okay with that. But they know that he wouldn't have passed looking like Bruce Willis, especially if they're going to have a lot of scenes together where they were supposed to be each other's. Just same person with a different age, of course. So it was sometimes distracting, but I knew it was, of course, a movie. So it wasn't so much that I was just like, oh, this is awful. I'm done with it.
Well, yeah, because also at the same time, I think their physical appearance being a little bit different is interesting, because even though they are the same person, they are still very different people. Even though that sounds kind of odd, like, they're very different versions of the same person, and I think that's fucking super interesting. And so having them look exactly alike, I think also kind of. I mean, not to say it would get like confusing, but I think that it's kind of like with the older version of Seth. They just got a different actor, and aged him up. So I was like, oh, you could have just gotten like, or no, with Paul Dano, it ends up being like he looks a lot more like the older version of him. And I was like, oh, that's just kind of weird. Like, Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt don't look a fucking thing alike. But I think the thing he got down better than the appearance was the voice of Bruce Willis. Like, he really got down that kind of, my name's Bruce Willis, like kind of like slow ramble that he has. And I thought that was super fucking cool. This movie's like smart. It trusts people visually. I'm a big fan of that. And at the same time, it gets super heady with the sci-fi, and then also doesn't have a problem backing off when it comes to the story's sake. We're here to watch a movie. We're not here to sit here and chat fucking Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't have a problem doing that, but let's do that like after we watch the movie. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my final thoughts. Let's just go ahead and get out of here and say fuck it. We'll just do like a little short episode. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, just watch it yourself. What are you listening to us for?
Right. But yeah, you ready to jump into this shit?
I guess so.
Okay, sweet. But yeah, this movie starts super interesting. This beautiful shot of young Joe out in this cornfield, got his headphones in, practicing his French, and the juxtaposition of something so gorgeous of this really unique and beautiful backdrop, and then juxtaposed to him just standing up with this huge ass gun and firing on this dude as soon as he appears. And the crazy part that always blows my mind now is like when the dude shows up, I swear to God, he's like, no, like he's just screaming, like screaming like no or something. And he just opens up on him. I'm like, holy fuck. So like the juxtaposition of that is crazy. What did you think about how they arrive as like time travel? Like there's not a lot of spectacle behind that. Like, what do you think about that choice?
I definitely think that makes this feel a lot more believable and a lot more grounded and realistic. That's not some long drawn out thing where he goes into some monologue or the guy comes out and then they have some weird 90s skit. Like you can tell that they wanted to just have a more grounded version of them traveling back in time. So them just kind of showing up is kind of cool. I think it's a pretty neat thing. It just makes me think about like the first person that came back. Like how would that, like imagine like witnessing that. That'd be so crazy.
Right, because I also think that this time travel, there's nothing said about going into the future. I'm pretty sure this is all a one-way. He even says that about Abe. He's like, Abe took a one-way ticket back, and he, like this was his compensation for all of that. And I was like, wow, like that's fucking crazy. And just how casual they are with all this time travel and shit. It's just fucking nuts. Yeah, we see him practicing in French. He blows the guy away. The year is 2044 in Kansas. like the time travel rules here is something that I think is interesting. Not really the rules, kind of the general air of like this time travel in Looper. Time travel has not yet been invented, but 30 years from now, it will have been. It will be instantly outlawed, used only in secret by the largest criminal organizations. It is nearly impossible to dispose of a body in the future, I'm told. Tacking techniques and whatnot. So when these criminal organizations in the future need someone gone, they use specialized assassins in our present called loopers. And so my employers in the future nab the target, they zap him back to me, their looper. He appears, hands tied and head sacked, and I do the necessaries, collect my silver. So the target has been vanished from the future, and I've just disposed of a body that technically does not exist. Like, holy shit. Like, what a fucking right off the rip, that
Very
premise,
cool
dude.
Twist. And it's definitely, like, believable, especially considering how, like, technology savvy everything is now, that somebody would have a problem, like, you know, like killing someone in the future and trying to get rid of that body. Because you would think, like our dog has a chip in it, you know? Like, like another, like, 50, 60, 70 years, like, it wouldn't be so far-fetched that, and at least in Rian Johnson's version of this universe, that, you know, it would probably be hard to dispose of a body too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Especially in 2044. I mean, eventually, you know, I could see it coming to that with the people being like, oh, wow, we can cut down on all these missing persons cases. You know, we can find, like, solve a lot of the stuff like a lot sooner. I could definitely see that happening. And yes, and basically we get this whole thing of him taking the body, dumping it down dumping down in the incinerator. This whole, I guess, whatever you want to call it, a refinery, warehouse, whatever the hell, we're talking about a factory. Rian Johnson was like, we didn't do anything to this place. This is exactly how it looks. It was a fucking safety nightmare. He was like, it was horrible. It was terrible to be in there. He said, but we used it for this beginning part. We used it for the part when they dragged Bruce Willis to the time machine, you know, in 2074. They used it later when it shows that one guy, like closing out his loop and shit. They're like, we used the hell out of this thing, but it was just terrifying to be in there. But yeah, young Joe disposes of his kill down in an incinerator and goes to have some lunch. I was like, oh yeah, that's nice. Just shoot a guy, blow a guy away. And it's like, I'm gonna go get a sandwich. He chats with his server, Beatrix. We see the world as it has become in 2044, run down and divided. Young Joe cashes in some of his silver and heads out to meet up with Seth, another fellow looper. I like this. I like this world building that they have. You know, as soon as he walks in, loopers, leave your blunderbusses here. I was like, that's fucking cool. And we also see that he only cashes out half of his silver. So it's interesting. I think that's almost kind of symbolic in a way, because not to get too like, oh, well, I think the subtext and the social commentary here, it's more so like seeing him split his silver in half is kind of interesting, like, because I feel like he's kind of torn. He is kind of like half and half in between these worlds, because he says loopers, they aren't the most forward thinking type of people, but he's putting 50% of all of his money towards a future. And, you know, I'm sure plenty of them do that. You have 30 years to go do whatever you want. But I think it's interesting that he actually does want some kind of future, but at the same time, he does something that he know will literally be the death of him. The irony in that, I was like, wow, that's odd. Like, I'm sure most loopers aren't like that. You know, it seems like a lot of younger guys who would, you know, piss their money away and, you know, on stupid shit. Like Seth gets that bike. You know what I mean?
Right. And I guess if we didn't bring it up at this point, we, of course, are going through a spoiler version of this movie.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I think they've been doing a good job warning about that. See, this is why we need the Australians.
Oh, no, I just come out and I'm like, surprise, bitch. No, but...
and here's the ending to Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, and here's the ending to Captain Marvel. Oh my God, we would get fucking destroyed. Like, there's no way the internet would just like kill the monster, like chase us.
Oh no, the internet.
Oh no, the slow ever marching death of the internet. But yeah, there's something. You know who. The person that Joseph Gordon-Levitt looks like as young Joe is actually Davey Havok from AFI. Like, he looks so much like him. Like, if you Google a picture of Davey Havok from like recently, like, he's gone through a lot of crazy looks and stuff, but he looks a shit ton like Davey Havok. what I think's funny is when he goes out to like meet up with Seth and stuff, it shows Joe kind of looking at his hairline in the mirror, and he's gonna go bald, as Bruce Willis. Which, not that there's anything wrong with being bald, but
it's okay, Colin.
it's okay. It's okay. I love this world building here with him. He gets into this fucking awesome car. He's got it under the car cover just to drive on streets that are covered with like homeless people that will he's like, oh no, my fucking Jansport backpack, and blows that guy away. I'm like, dude, that's like a $9 backpack. Like, what the fuck?
I know, that's brutal. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy to see that. And just a school bus parked in the middle of the fucking street. I'm like, where is everybody? Like, are there cops? Like, fire department? Like, what the hell is going on? So I love that world building. I like the fact that they actually took the time to like do that and show this world. And it actually makes the fact that if this is the way the world is now, then in 30 years, when all this shit is going on with the Rainmaker, and all this stuff, it is no problem for these guys to kill people and dispose of a body. That makes it more believable for me. I'm like, if the world looks like this in 2044, I can imagine what it looks like in 2074. It must be so easy for them to just loot people like no fucking problem.
Right.
But yeah, they're on their way to the club. Seth buys that fucking slat bike that won't start. He's like, hey, step away from the bike, and fucking points the shotgun at the homeless dude.
I just want a sandwich.
Yeah. I love, he's like, your mom didn't raise you right. He's like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go pick your mother up on my bike, and I'm going to take my blunderbuss. And he's just like, just gets cut off.
Yeah.
This guy, Paul Dano, is great. He's in There Will Be Blood. He's in Little Miss Sunshine. Have you ever seen Little Miss Sunshine?
No, but I know what that movie is, I guess.
It's super good, dude. It's one of Lindsay's favorite movies. And at first I was like, it's kind of more of an indie movie. I don't have anything wrong with those like at all, but they're usually just not in my wheelhouse, but I do enjoy them. So I was like, fuck it, I'll watch it. And I loved it. It is so good. I can't recommend it enough.
Okay.
Dave's all right, got it. We fucking you're in love with Paul Dano, dude. We get it.
we know you know his name.
His name is Robert Paulson. Little Fight Club reference. This is where we also get the introduction of TK. The whole thing of 10% of the population has some form of TK. Everybody thought we were going to get superheroes, but all we got were assholes in bars, like flipping quarters and shit like that. What did you think about this TK thing? Like that they've got added on. Now we've got superpowers and time travel put into this movie. Like, did this bother you at all, or like, what did you think about it?
Well, I mean, if anybody's doing like a time travel movie in the first place, it's already like, I guess in my head, a little more like it can get away with some little more fictional based things. So whenever they introduced that, but it wasn't making it seem like he could like do something really crazy with it. I was just like, oh, this is a weird kind of like quirky thing that they're trying to pass by in this universe. So, I mean, I don't know. It didn't bother me that much, I guess.
See, like, I don't mind it because when they first kind of dump it on us, it's it's only 10% and they really can't do that much with it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. But at the same time, I just don't see, like, if you remove all the elements of TK from this, if you remove Sid having TK and all these other people having TK, it doesn't really affect the story like that much. Like Sid can still be an incredibly intelligent kid who comes up and rises up and becomes this terrible person without being a TK fucking like Akira, like, crazy, like Super Saiyan motherfucker. I do, and I can't believe that as a comic book fan, literally a fucking with a X-Men wallet in my back pocket, I'm over here talking about, oh, look, we could use a little bit less telekinesis in this movie. Like, I should loop back and shoot myself in the
make this boring.
Yeah, I should loop myself. I should end my own loop for saying such a thing. But no, it's a little much to also go on with this world of time travel is all I'm saying. I don't want to beat a dead bush. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do like it. But at the same time, I could have done without it, and it wouldn't have killed me. But
Right.
this is also where we see, we see them going out to the bar. We also see this guy. I think his name is Zach. This is where we start hearing about how your loop actually gets closed. I love this line when they show up to the club. This whole town, big heads and small potatoes. I'm like, that's fucking cool. Like, I like that. Like, you got all these people that want all this shit, but it's just like, there's not that much to go around.
It's
like, you can't be this.
It's really just simple shit going on everywhere. It's nothing really that elaborate that they think it is.
No, yeah, it's fucking Kansas, When they arrive, Joe attempts to book his usual lady of the night, Susie, but she has been booked up for the night by a Gat man. Joe hears that one of his fellow loopers has, quote unquote, closed their loop. This is where we get the looper rules. There's a reason we're called loopers. When we sign up for this job, taking out the future's garbage, we also agree to a very specific proviso. Time travel in the future is so illegal that when our employers want to close our contracts, they'll also want to erase any trace of their relationships with us ever existing. So if we're still alive 30 years from now, they'll find our older self, zap him back to us, and we'll kill him like any other job. This is called closing your loop. You get a golden payday, a handshake, and you get released from your contract. Enjoy the next 30 years. This job doesn't tend to attract the most forward-thinking people. It's like,
wow.
That's another crazy. Here we are disposing of bodies, and then that's what I'm saying. Like, I like this movie, but we've already got the time travel thing. Time travel's enough, but now we've got time traveling hitmen with telekinesis, and time traveling hitmen with telekinesis that kill themselves. I'm like, fuck. Like, it's. I understand why people at first it's like, dude, this movie's a lot to take on. I was like, I get it. It
has to, but I think Rian Johnson was trying to write this to carve out a really specific niche of a story that just wasn't done before, so that wasn't just another time travel movie. Because if it was in the beginning, we would have just been like, well, this is another time travel movie, but you're explaining there's just so much more to it than that. So it's definitely makes it much more interesting that it has kind of all those unique twists. But, if every movie were like this, I think you would start being like, oh, these are all so fictional,
Right. And like as I sit here and I'm like, man, as a film goer, I think I could have gone without some of these things. But as like just my personal, like when I try to be objective about it, not keen, like right into my personal taste, because time travel and fucking people with superpowers is fucking right up my ass. Like that is right at home for me. So it's, like I like it personally, but as a film thing, I'm like, I always think minimally is better. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. Fuck, that's why I started a fucking podcast. This is where we see, Zach closing his loop. Basically, you're getting the silver bars in the backs of these guys as they come through, the regular people that you kill. And then when you see the golden bars, you've closed your loop. Congratulations. You've got 30 years to live, until they come and, like you said, find you if you're still alive and send you back to be killed. And this is just kind of like their life. He's like, well, let's shrink up. And they all, they're doing like the eye drop drugs and shit. I thought that was cool.
I could see that being a thing, probably. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Like, I thought that was so fucking interesting because I feel like I've seen that in Cowboy Bebop before. Isn't that in Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah,
like them doing like eye drugs.
In the very beginning of that starts off with him trying to catch somebody that has red eye.
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of that just because, guess what? Isn't there like one season of Cowboy Bebop?
Intentionally. They kind of like this movie in an ironic way. They wrote it to have a beginning and end. That's not the type of show maker that wants it to go on for seasons and seasons, just deteriorate in quality. So he does a couple series like that.
See, and I love that. I love that kind of shit. I need to get into it. But yeah, Joe and his friends celebrate their friend closing his loop with drugs and drink throughout the night. Joe awakens the next day with bloodshot eyes just to repeat his day over and over again. We see the type of life Joe lives by day to day, and the more and more loops being closed at a faster rate. I thought that was interesting. During that montage, we've got the whole, man, that's the fourth loop closed this month. So we're starting to see this increase in the loops being closed, which is something kind of like important to note, because there is some stuff like, as I'm watching this, like I'm like, oh god, there's a lot of shit to take on notes, because it's not super actiony. Even when it's like super actiony stuff, it's like Bruce Willis shows up, then Joseph Gordon-Levitt runs away, but then Kid Blue shows up, but then it's like, oh god, there's a lot of different people playing in this sometimes at once.
There is, yeah.
but it's still fun. That's kind of like the fun part. I feel like this is almost like a spiritual kind of sibling to like Inception. I feel like this is like like there's a movie called Primer that I've yet to watch. I've heard it is fucking insane. It's like one of the best time travel movies ever made. It's super scientific. I've always wanted to watch it. Dude, it is. Rian Johnson went to the writers of that and showed them the script, and they said, "What do you think about it?" And he said, "Well, your time travel's totally fucked. That's not plausible." And he's like, "Oh, I don't give a shit about that. It's a movie, dude." So I thought that was pretty funny. But like, apparently, it's got some super advanced like kind of shit in it that's hard to follow. But I like this. This time travel's like a lot more simple. But yeah, we kind of just get like the cycle of his life. We see this montage, we see what's going on, and that is totally fucking destroyed one day by Seth showing up in the middle of the night. He's got his gun, he's fucking sweating and just like sweating and snotting and just shitting everywhere. Like this guy looks like Senator Kelly in the X-Men when they like in the first X-Men movie, and he turns into like that jelly blob thing and just liquefies off the table.
Wow.
Yeah.
Specific reference.
Dude, that's a fucking crazy scene. I remember that from, I mean, fuck, I've got it on DVD out there. But yeah, this is where we start hearing about Seth letting his loop run. This is like another big rule about, basically when your time comes and you're supposed to shoot yourself and in your loop, that's it. But apparently Seth has let his just fucking go. And I'm like, oh God, dude, like you can feel it. Like this movie does such a great job of building the tension on something that we don't even know the consequences of. And I'm like, oh. And
I love the thing that we were all wondering is the first thing that they address as an issue in this is that one of their pals had a guy that had showed back up and it was him. And he let him run off because everybody was like, fuck that. I just let him live. What are the consequences? And then we start to experience that very early on.
Yeah, and the consequences of it are fucking horrendous. We'll get to it. But yeah, basically, Seth breaks down, admits that he has now let his loop run by not eliminating his older self. The older version tricks Seth by singing a familiar song that entices him not to kill him. Older Seth goes on to explain about a new quote unquote holy terror boss man in the future called the Rainmaker, who's been closing all of the loops. Seth begs Joe to hide him after older Seth escapes and Abe's men show up. As soon as they show up, he's just like, "Hey, open the door!" And I love Seth. He's like, "Ah!" Like he just this like crazy scream. He did like that sounded like the chick from The Grudge for a second. Like he just was just like, "Oh!"
That's just that high pitch. Just totally shitting himself. So, dude, you end up seeing, getting reminded of everything that Joe's character's been saving up. He stashes them under the floor.
Right.
And it turns out that he's not even there for them. He shows up. He's like, "Hey, you got any milk?"
Yeah. Well, I love when at first when he shows up and he's got the gun and he's just like, he turns the lights off and he's like, "Hey, give me the gun." He's like, "What?" "Oh, yeah." And hands him the gun.
I better not be holding this.
It's actually great. A little bit of comedic relief because this movie's so serious and we've got this whole time travel backdrop going on. Just having even that little bit of comedic relief was like nice.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not like a comedy, but it has some nice little moments like peppered throughout, and I really like that.
Yeah, you're not going to be smiling very much in this movie with the next scene showing up when is it Jeffrey Daniels?
Yeah, Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels.
Almost said Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, he just looks like a sad dog as it's this whole movie.
He just looks like a big fucking shaggy dog.
If you watch this movie upside down, he's smiling the whole time. That's one way to say it.
That's actually an extremely accurate. He's just so shaggy and like fucking. Oh my God, like, that's hilarious.
Shows up and he's like, "Man, all this crap's going on." He's like, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah, it's just like, "Hey, everybody."
I know. How did you become our leader? Jeez, are you on some medicine, some downers or something?
Kid Blue inspects Joe's apartment, not finding Seth, which leads them to their conversation with Abe. While they wait for Abe, Kid Blue almost shoots his other foot off. I love that shit. He's like, don't pull your other foot off, kid. I love the scene. He pulls up the gun. He points it at Joe. Joe's still kind of grinning. He cocks the hammer back, and Joe just drops that face. I'm like, yeah, like now it's getting fucking serious. And it's hilarious. He fucking opens up the door. Abe opens up the door, hits him in the head. The gun goes off, and he's like, hey, don't shoot your other foot off, kid. Like, God, that's fucking hilarious. Both of them back to back. And this is where also Joe explains exactly who Abe is. I know some people have problems with narration. I personally really don't. It's just ever since like Goodfellas and like Shawshank Redemption, I think I just grew up watching those movies, and I don't mind it in a lot of stuff, especially when it's needed. You know, if you use a lot though, I'm gonna get kind of sick of it. But it's used sparingly here, more so at the beginning, and I like that. It kind of helps set up this world a little bit more. Right. But this is his description of Abe. This man is from the future. He was sent back here by the mob, a one-way ticket to run the loopers. That's low effort. That's low effort even for Abe. So to pass the time, he recruited some real muscle, the Gat Men. Now he runs the city. Any other city that would be impressive. So basically, yeah, he got bored and wanted to run the town and shit. Now this is where things start getting a little fucky.
And look at kind of attitude took over that whole city. He showed up and he was like, you guys are all mine now. And everybody there was just like, whatever. We're parking our buses in the middle of the road.
Right, yeah, this thing, I was expecting fucking RoboCop just to come walking down the street, just like shooting people in the dick left and right.
Nope, he just showed up and made them feel like shit, and they were like, whatever, you tell me what to do then.
Yeah. This is this is an awesome conversation between the two of them as well that I really like. But before we get into that, like the time travel, like causality stuff is what's interesting here, because if you start getting into this whole thing of what you do in the past can affect the future, then Abe coming into the past and dramatically changing things is a big deal. Even like the butterfly effect, you know, even if I were to go back in time and buy a house that you were going to live in, or I did something just in the slightest way to affect things. It's a butterfly effect. It sets all this other stuff off. So there's kind of like some give and take in that. I think, you know, anybody can say, well, you know, this is what you did, and you're not sticking to it. And I understand that, but this is also a movie, and I'm not really that worried about it. But it is kind of interesting though, to just kind of, even though it's not technically possible, or people start getting really in a tizzy about this stuff, it's still fun just to kind of chase your tail around the pole and just be like, well, what if you did this? Well, then this would happen, and blah blah. You know, the whole grandfather paradox thing is interesting. But Abe reminisces about Joe's life as Joe plays dumb about Seth's whereabouts. I cleaned you up and I put a gun in your hand. I gave you something that was yours. I could see the bad version of your life and I changed it. I'll show you. And I love that he keeps going, I'll show you how much I know you. I'm not going to break you. I'm just going to set you back a ways. Like, I love his delivery. I was like, holy shit. He is so subtly and menacingly terrifying. Like, he is so subtle about it, and he's just so calm and relaxed. But, you know, because he literally says, like, what do you think? I'm going to pick up a hammer? I'm going to break your hand? He's like, that is not the situation. I'm going to tell you right now, that is not going to happen. Like, he has such an odd speak of the way that he talks, and I think that's so interesting. Even
it makes him feel not grounded. You know, it almost makes him feel a little like he could snap and do anything in any second, because you anticipate somebody that apparently has that much power being somebody that would just go AWOL, you know, just go nuclear any second on somebody that pisses him off. But again, it's like you said, Kansas City. So
yeah, fucking Kansas.
Oh no.
And I love the whole thing of him being like, what are you wearing? His 20th century clothes, you know, blah blah blah. And he's got like this huge like silk fucking robe on. It looks like one of the stonecutters from The Simpsons. I was like, what the fuck?
We do.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome, dude. I was like, I can't remember if I wasn't sure if you were a big Simpsons fan or not. I couldn't remember. We always watched Family Guy and Futurama growing up, but I was like, I can't remember if we ever watched The Simpsons.
But I knew about Futurama because of Simpsons and that whole thing. So.
Yeah,
those are awesome. Futurama is like still probably number one almost.
Oh yeah, I fucking love that show. Yeah, I cleaned you up. I put a gun in your hand. Blah blah blah. Abe cuts to the chase and tells young Joe that he will either have to give Seth up or give them half his silver stash. Abe warns Joe not to go to France, but to go to China instead. And the tension finally breaks, and young Joe reveals that Seth is in the safe under his floor. This is interesting because one thing is, they don't really want Seth because of the money. Like, ultimately, their goal is not to take Joe's silver. So I was like, it's odd that they're saying, give us your silver and you can just have Seth. But like, I don't think that's true. I think he gives up his silver and they still go after Seth and they still kill him, because their whole problem is the fact that he's just let this thing run. It's not a debt that he's owed. It's not something you can pay off with money. You know, he's supposed to die. And he even says, you know, you let these guys from the future run around in the past too much. This time travel shit turns your brain to scrambled eggs or whatever. So like, my whole thing is like, I don't even know exactly why this is offered, because I don't think this is genuine at all. I wonder if it's just him fucking with him, if it's just him testing him to see exactly, you know, like how loyal like he would be to Abe or how loyal he would be to Seth. But like, what did you think about that? Did you think that was like necessary, or was it just something like, do you think they actually would have left Seth alone?
I mean, I guess if there really wasn't any repercussions, then like there wouldn't be any tension for the whole basis between Joe's, you know, kind of identical alternate selves to be really like, you know, afraid of worrying about the life or death piece of this. So, I mean, right?
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to say that all over again.
I guess it was. I don't know. Would the movie have worked if they didn't have put that in there? Is kind of what I'm getting at.
I mean, yeah, yes and no, because my thing is like, I still don't mind it being in there. I just don't. You're talking about the silver part, not the hunting down Seth part, right?
I guess I'm thinking about the Seth part. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Well, yeah, no, I think it has to go in there with the Seth thing, because they don't want somebody from the future running around in the past and going crazy with all of this shit. And you know, somebody with knowledge of the future as well. They want to keep this thing. If they want people literally killing themselves to close their own loop, exposure is like a huge problem. Jeff Daniels even says that later when he's just like, every minute, every second this happens is too long. He's like, find him now. So it, like this creates like big problems and stuff. But no, this is where we cut to old Seth attempting to flee the city a la Train before seeing a message carved into his arm. Holy fucking shit. This is terrifying.
Yeah.
What did you think about this?
This totally is like, this is what hooks you in right here when you start realizing how serious it can be. That, you know, they were even trying, they are smart enough to even know to scratch that into his arm. But I love how, like you said, they make you put a lot of this movie together yourself. You said that a little bit earlier. And that's kind of one thing where he didn't go, oh my gosh, they're cutting into my hand in the future, the arm in the future, so that I read it in the past. You know, they didn't spell that out. And you just kind of have to realize it with him. And it's just, it gives you this deep sinking feeling, especially when his fingers stop appearing on his hand. He's struggling even just to drive to the place to even comply, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's like, holy shit, dude. This whole, I mean, dude, I couldn't even imagine just being somewhere looking down and being like, where the fuck are my fingers gone? And you're like, what was on my tongue? Like, your tongue, dude, like it's easier for me to watch like way more shit, but like the fact, what really gets me is he looks up, his fingers are gone, then his nose is gone. For one thing, the imagery of him alone is terrifying, you know, because you empathize with those parts being gone. But literally, when the shot of him with like fucking two fingers and no nose, it's just creepy as fuck.
Ooh, right when it clips to him driving the car and the lights are going by outside on the poles, and you notice his nose isn't there anymore.
Right, yeah. No, that's the shit that I'm like, that is horrific, man. And when he gets out of the car, one of his legs just disappears when he goes to brake, and the other one's gone when he gets out.
So he's got to crash into a dumpster to stop the car. It definitely makes you think like, fuck, I don't want to sign up to be a looper if that becomes a job.
Right, and the whole thing of yeah, like, and I mean, for one thing, I don't want to skip over. Did we skip over them carving the message in his arm to tell him the address to go to? I think we might have skipped over that.
No, that's what I started this out with, is that you have to insinuate what that must mean if they're carving it in there. It's fucked up.
Right. The most terrifying part of this whole thing is when he's, he starts to talk and he's like, what? And his tongue's been cut out and the other leg gives way and both his arms are gone now. And he's literally just on nubs, so crawling on the street. And he's like, please. And I'm like, oh no, dude, I can't watch that shit. Yeah. That really fucked me up, man. Like, I'm a big horror movie fan. I've watched some fucked up shit, but like that stuff got to me. Like somebody, just this invisible horror happening to somebody and then begging you to stop. Like, holy fuck. But he does eventually get to the door. This guy is actually a double amputee. The guy, it's not, this is not like a digital effect. They just got a guy and put a wig on him and dressed him up and fucking had him beat on the doors with his, with his arms. And then if you notice, he kind of just like falls back out of shot. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's the same thing they did in The Thing when the guy shoves his arms down and they rip them off and they come back up. It's just a double amputee. But I was like, God, that's I'm sure Rian Johnson knows that about The Thing. I'm like, there's no fucking way if he's such a fan of practical effects. But yeah, and this is where also Kid Blue pops out and shoots the older version of Seth, and ends it right there. They pretty much in the loop. The thing that gets me is ultimately, if old Seth running around is the problem, why not just kill young Seth, right? I mean, that's kind of a thing that I've heard a lot. In a lot of discussions I've heard about this, is like, if you need to get the older version back, or you don't even necessarily need him back, you just don't need him running around. You just need to kill the younger version. Like, does that make sense to you, or is that like, is that just getting like too deep into it?
Well, man, we could get really deep into this and just be talking about this time travel shit forever. But it is really confusing to think about where some of the iterations of the other person is at when you think about where they should be in time. It is really weird to kind of wrap your head around. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And ultimately, it's not like there's a lot of stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor in this movie that they've left out. And there might be some more explanations for that. The exact motive of why it is they're doing it. I think part of it might even just be the torture of it, of just like, this is what you get for trying to run, and we also have to set an example for other loopers. Like, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. Like, and fuck yeah, I would close my loop. I'm not going through that shit.
Yeah. I mean, if you already signed up knowing that, and then when it gets to that point, I mean,
right, exactly.
You've already signed your death warrant at that point.
Right. But yeah, he ignores Blah sees parts of his body disappearing, and he is gunned down by Kid Blue. I love just the ominous shot of that doctor in the background, but you can still hear kind of like a heartbeat, and that's why old Seth hasn't disappeared, because he's still alive. Young Seth is still alive. He's still sitting there on that table. I'm sure unconscious or like drugged up or something, but he's definitely still alive.
Yeah.
I was like, that is what scares the fuck out of me. And like, was he conscious for part of that? Because there's no way you're going to say conscious for them cutting all of that off of you. So it's like, maybe he went unconscious, because also, if he is alive and awake for most of that, then that means those are memories that are being implanted into old Seth as well. So like, as your limbs are disappearing, you get the memories of it. And I'm like, oh my God, like that thought is just a double fucking whammy. But to make himself feel better, young Joe spends some time with Susie, taking drugs and lamenting over his choice to give up Seth. He reminisces about his mother and tells Susie that he wants her to take his silver. She refuses, saying that she's got her own job. And, what do you think about this relationship between Susie and Joe? What's going on? Like, do you think she actually likes him, or do you think this is more of like this is a business relationship kind of thing?
I kind of feel like the whole entire mentality there is that they sort of settle. It's just that what they have is maybe a little bit more interesting because it's like this character that Joe plays when he's younger just doesn't seem like he's attached to things so much that he actually has an interest in her. And of course, that's something to keep him going every day. It makes his life a little less monotonous, I guess.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's not even really that he's like in love with her and he wants to marry her and run off. It's the closest thing that he has. And I think that says a lot about him, this kind of act of desperation, to be like, here, take half my fucking silver. And she's like, no, thanks. I mean, you see where she lives later. Like, it's not like she doesn't need the money. She's just like, no, I just don't want to have any kind of like attachment to this at all. I mean, she's looking at the fucking clock. She's like trying to bang him. He's like, no, get off me. I don't want it. But no, what cracks me up is he's just kind of like, it's like, he's like, just rub my hair. And she's like, oh,
I won't have it much longer.
Yeah. That's fucking good. But you fucking bastard. No, but what I love about the scene is the fact that she is just so looking at the clock. She's like, this is a business thing. Like, this is not like, don't get this complicated. And because she even says services rendered, services earned, or something like that. And that's where she starts like running her fingers through her hair because she doesn't want to take his money for nothing. So she needs something to do physically, to feel better about this, because it shows that she does kind of some kind of conscience. Like, she is kind of like, I'm not just going to take this money. I like this guy. He is a nice guy and he's one of my best clients. But at the same time, you're getting a little attached here. Like, come on, dude. I am a prostitute, by the way. Let's not catch feelings.
I mean, she has to worry about her income before she can worry about creating that relationship, because one of those is a little more stable than the other.
Right. Exactly. Joe wakes up the next day going about his usual routine, waiting to kill a mark. The mark is late, however, which is extremely out of the ordinary. After a brief moment, the mark arrives. He is unhooded, which catches young Joe off guard. They lock eyes as young Joe realizes that this is old Joe. Bum ba da dum.
Yep.
What did you think about this?
This is definitely when the movie just takes off from here, because it's super interesting thinking about. You shortly learn about like how Joe had spent that 30 years, which is very interesting. The hairdo, anyway, I'm getting too far ahead of it, but I think that this definitely makes the movie just like seals the deal. It's like makes it a unique version of this time travel version of this. Kind of them hunting each other down is pretty cool. And that's like inevitably going to begin here if you're thinking about like, well, how's he going to deal with this if this is kind of like the main character? It made this super unique, so I loved it.
Yeah, no, I thought this was super interesting. This is definitely a twist that I didn't see. And really the whole point up until this, the whole point of the movie kind of up until this is just setting up this world for us. What we were, I think 22, 23 minutes in when we have all the information that we're pretty much going to learn about time travel and how this world works. We understand how loopers work. We understand the consequences of not closing your loop. We understand about TK. We understand all this stuff, and it's been 23 minutes. So, I mean, that can be good and bad. I do think it's a little fast and it's a little heavy, but it's okay because it's stuff that I like personally. So I'm kind of like more forgiving of it in that sense. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm good.
Oh, sorry. Young Joe attempts to kill old Joe, but he blocks the shot with the gold payday on his back and rushes young Joe.
It's badass how he turns around to block that.
Yeah, didn't he like fucking throw a brick of gold and like hit him in the face or something?
Yeah, he has these ranged attacks while he's trying to get close range and like beat him up. You can tell that he had become sharper and sharper over those 30 years if his time traveling version of himself was able to take down the, like, if you really want to think of it, almost kind of like amateur version of himself. But at the time, of course, they think they're the best. Their one job is just to shoot someone the second they show up, but he bests himself. It's pretty interesting.
Right, exactly like what you said. We've got old Joe with so much more experience, as we'll see later. But young Joe's just used to sitting in a spot, literally, I mean, with his headphones on, just waiting for somebody. Like, man, part of me is like, why don't they just have like a machine or something? Like, why don't they just have some kind of like button they land on and a shotgun just fucking blows them away like at a spot? I was like, God, there's so much shit you could replace these loopers with. Just put a fucking bear trap wherever they're gonna land.
Yeah,
like,
just have your
snatch them up.
over an active volcano.
Yeah, fuck yeah, why not? I mean, fucking put it right in the middle of Mount Doom.
Seriously, the middle of the ocean, out in space. We could keep going.
Yeah, we can, and we will. Young Joe attempts to kill him, but yeah, he's blocks a shot with the gold plating, and he knocks Young Joe unconscious. Young Joe wakes up to a note on his chest telling him to leave town, but instead decides to go back to his apartment. Joe grabs a gun and sees a freshly lit cigarette still smoldering. Kid Blue and company arrive. Well, come back, basically. We've already been there. Young Joe traps Kid Blue in the safe and a firefight ensues. I love how he fucking traps him in that safe. The choreography of it, of him just pushing him down and just going leaping over him.
Yeah, smashing his hands in there. That's gotta hurt.
Yeah.
Everyone has smashed their hand to some degree in their life, and you feel pain. I cringed when I felt that. I was like, oh, we had these huge car doors, and like the cars we had growing up, that like. Not that they're drastically different than today, but they were coupes and not like sedans, so the doors were heavy. And I smashed my fingers in those a couple times. It ruins like your next 2 days. It's so painful.
Dude, I'm getting out of a car once. I'm like 16. Yeah, I was in chorus. We had gone to like a rehearsal. I was riding with some friends. Well, they have like a 2-seater car, so I'm having to crawl out of the back, all fucking 6'4" of my ass, having to crawl out of the back of this car. I get out and I kind of put my hand down where the door would shut, as like to like pry myself out of this tiny ass car.
Ooh, and I get back.
Out, dude. She shut the door. The door clicks shut, like because my hand is up. My hand is up top.
Yeah,
and it luckily landed all across my fucking knuckles, like not on my fingers, not on anything sensitive, like all of my knuckles, and to the point that I was just kind of like, oh shit, my hand. Like there was honestly no pain. It was fucking crazy. Like I just popped the door open real quick, and I was like, holy shit.
The only way that fingers could fit in there and it not fuck it up.
Right, dude. Seriously, I was extreme. Yeah, I was extremely fucking lucky. I need to start doing scratch offs, I guess.
You need to go on America's Got Talent and get people to shut doors on your fingers.
Yeah, that'd be so fucking great. The amazing finger whacking super
just
dude.
Don't even explain that. Just have some really cool, like intense music playing that's also building up to something. Just have someone shut your hand in the door.
Yeah, just literally walk out there, stare at the crowd, put my hand in the door, don't break eye contact, and just slam it and watch them.
And then they all freak out, but then just kind of open your hand up and then kind of show them both sides.
They're like,
yes, they go crazy. They start crying.
People start crying.
It becomes an internet thing. People try it themselves at home and it doesn't work. There's a lot of injuries.
Their heads explode in the crowd and they start throwing up on each other.
Hey, let's talk about this fictional looper, okay? Jeez.
Yeah. not talking about our America's Got Talent people throwing up on each other and blowing their heads up. But yeah, so basically he escapes from these Gat men who are after him via the fire escape, but he also like kind of gets injured and falls off of it in the process, and we fade to black. This is where we jump around a little bit. Now this is technically a bit of a different timeline. The events of what would have happened if he had just closed his loop like regularly.
Right.
And this is super important. Obviously, this is just old Joe's timeline, but it's super important for a reason I'll bring up towards the end.
But you see that he moves to Shanghai, right?
Right, yeah. This is after, he kills his target, he collects his payday, he heads for Shanghai. This is where we see a montage. One night in Bangkok. We then see a montage of Joe's life in Shanghai over the next 30 years. His money dries up quickly due to drugs and partying, and Joe then resorts back to the only thing he knows, a life of crime. However, things change in the year 23 when Joe meets his future wife. Could not find her character name anywhere. there. Literally on IMDb, it's future wife. And I was like, all right, fuck it. We'll go with that. Can't even name her. She's like the whole reason the goddamn movie happens, but you don't have a fucking name for her. But
that's a good point. I didn't try looking up her name, so I didn't know that.
But yeah, I love all this. I love the fact that he actually went to Shanghai. He didn't go to France after that conversation with Abe. I'm from the future. Go to China. I'm going to France. And it's like, right. and I actually, just to go back to that scene, I like the fact that this also shows the fact that he's having so many people constantly tell him what to do, like without, because he's a nothing. He's a nobody. That's the reason why he became a looper. They're expendable people who are, he's like he says later, I was sold into like basically like slavery in a way.
Right.
He's like, and I was, I ran off and I was nothing. I was nobody. So he's constantly being told what to do by other people. He's told what to do by Abe. He's told where to be, with his orders. He's told what to do by old Joe. Everybody's telling him what to do. And I think that's what's so interesting about the climax of this movie is seeing him break that cycle. The cycle is me being passive and letting people tell me what to do. And I'm not doing that anymore. And I think that's super fucking interesting. And that's basically this whole thing with him not closing his loop. Picks back up with, it's what year, like I said, around year 23, he meets this woman. Joe puts down his drugs and guns, now attempting to lead some kind of normal life. But alas, in the 30th year, the Rainmaker comes for him, and old Joe is collected to be sent back in time to be killed. I love this scene of him fighting with the guys as they show up. What do you think of these future Gat men working for the Rainmaker? Like, what do you think of their design and stuff?
The Amish gang.
The Quaker Oats boys.
The Quaker Oats boys. That's better. I guess they had to give them some kind of costume design for them to be that far in the future. And they are, I guess, like in Shanghai. So I guess they're Chinese, right? So it's kind of.
I don't think they are. I think maybe like one or two of them are, but I think the rest of them. One of them I thought was straight up Rian Johnson. I was like, wow, that looks like a pudgy little white dude. Like that might be Rian Johnson.
Yeah, I think one of them is. Oh yeah, I think maybe all of them are white. Now that I'm looking at it, but they're. I mean, I'm sure if I saw them walking down the street, I wouldn't have thought that they're like blunderbuss carrying assassins or anything.
Yeah, no. If anything, I figured they would be like, "Hi, do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior?" Like, what do you guys? You guys look like a bunch of like rogue nuns. Like, what are you fucking
we're
wearing?
Rolling through on our horses, and your car's in the way, moving or else.
Makes me think of Seth Green and Sex Drive. Good luck with the future ride, spaceman. I haven't seen that in a while. It's fucking great.
The only time I think we saw that is when we all went to the movies and saw it. That's
for
so
real,
crazy.
yeah. But yeah, this is where they take Joe, they burn the house down. We don't really see what happens to the wife, but spoiler alert, she gets shot in the stomach.
Yep. It's one of the last things he almost sees before he's brought into that refinery or wherever it is.
Right, exactly. But when Joe shows up, this is just where he basically makes a choice to fight them off, and fucking kills the first two dudes and gets on top of that third one and just pulls that towel. The look on Bruce Willis's face, it's like, holy fuck, I am buying this. This is awesome. I mean, this is not really.
And in the back of his head, he's got seconds left in his life because any second he's just going to be in another time and then shot, and that's it. So I mean, he's thinking that he's seeing the last 10 or 20 seconds ever.
Right, and it's like, what do I have to lose? Fuck it, man.
Yeah.
He just goes for it. And yeah, this is old Joe making the decision to go backwards and try and stop this thing, to go and do things, just like the Terminator, which is interesting. Terminator had 3 Sarah Connors to kill. Joe has 3 children to kill. I was like, oh, I wonder if that's kind of like a little subtle nod, maybe, like to Terminator, which I thought was fucking cool.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. That's cool.
Yeah, just something. I mean, I'm sure that's just me reading too much into it because I am not going to read anything about time travel for a few weeks after this shit. And I'm like, dude, I have been
You're
up
gonna
and
have
down.
Some weird dreams, I swear, the next few days.
Oh, dude, I'm walking around my house and at work, and I'm just like, is this real? Is this reality? I'm like, oh God, I got to stop thinking of this shit.
Have I always been here, but never been here exactly?
What year is it? What? But yeah, Joe successfully kills his 3 attackers. He then decides to travel backwards, and we see the events play forward from old Joe's perspective. He leaves young Joe behind after their altercation, where he hits him with those big fucking giant ass meaty Bruce Willis hands. Knocks the fuck out of him, takes off in the truck, and heads into the city. He collects some supplies and begins to receive these new memories from the new actions of young Joe. I love him getting the supplies at the convenience store, and he just sets down the blunderbuss, and he's like, I'm gonna need that jacket. The guy just fucking gives it to him.
The guy's like, God, 3rd time today.
It's like, I already had an Austria dude come in here and steal my bike and my sunglasses. But
he was really mean.
Yeah, he was very cold, very robotic. He collects some supplies. He starts receiving these new memories. He follows young Joe back to the apartment and quickly lays waste to the Gatmen, attempting to kill young Joe and basically himself. I love that he's like, "What are you doing? Stupid, you stupid!" He's got a major advantage over young Joe at this point too, for being able to see all these memories come to him just as like pictures, basically. I was like, that is fucking cool, but at the same time, you're at the disadvantage of what young Joe could do. If you were coming at him and you had a knife to his throat and he couldn't push the knife back or something, yeah, go ahead and stab me, you're gonna fucking die too. Like, anything that happens to me is gonna happen to you. And I think
right.
That's fucking cool.
Right. It's neat how they always showed how they transport the gold or silver, because it helps you understand how anybody would even have a chance of surviving an immediate shotgun blast. He spins around and blocks it. Whenever you end up watching, like, seeing it a second time, I just love, that's a cool part.
Yeah, and I especially, I love he just walks across that alley, and that guy's like, what the fuck? And he looks down, looks back up, and he's just right there. And like, it's just like such a, I don't know what it was about that was so fucking funny. Like, right. he didn't try and creep up on him on the side. He's just like, it's just like, just stand still. I don't think he can see us.
Yeah, stalking himself. It is a little weird, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, he follows him back to the apartment. He lays waste to the Gatmen. He rescues young Joe from the hood of that car. He drags him off the car and drops him off next to the train tracks. Very subtle choice, by the way. I wonder what he's trying to tell him. Like, get the fuck out of here,
you idiot.
And young Joe returns to the city. He has no idea where to find him. I love that. He's like, what the fuck do I do? This is when I'm talking about these advantages and disadvantages that they both have. It is really awesome, but he can't find old Joe anywhere. But old Joe has gone to the fucking computer banks that they've got. I love all the books wrapped in plastic. That's a cool fucking touch. Kind of like the sacred text. I like that a lot.
It's funny if he, because I'm sure the internet 30 years later is so much better for what he's used to when he pulls that monitor out of the desk and is using it. It'd be funny if they had like the dial-up noise.
Oh, dude, yeah, I expected just to see like 3 or 4 of those that were like the porn section in the library.
Oh, God.
Dude, my mom worked in the library for fucking years. I mean, you know this. And like, she said there would be people all the time who would come in there and like look up porn stuff, and people would have to go and say something to them. I'm like, you're in a fucking public library. Jesus Christ, dude.
Think about like old, like 85-year-old Doris, who started working there forever ago. And now she's like, and now my job involves having to go stop those people. Like,
I found out what a rim job was. It'd be like, you see old Joe, and he prints out the map, and then he kind of looks around. Nobody's around him. He's like, well, I've got the internet here. And he just starts to rub one out.
Oh, God.
It's so fucking funny. He printed off this map and got a weird subscription to Pornhub. I don't know. It's just super weird stuff. Don't look on there. Oh yeah, and this is also young Joe, or no, I'm sorry, not young Joe. My notes, I typed young and old Joe about 50 fucking times each of my notes. It's so confusing. It's like, well, I can't say Joe.
Which Joe?
Like,
Joe that came. Fuck it.
Right. But he's investigating this mysterious number that we've seen written on his hand. We'll hear about the explanation of this later. But Joe prints out a map and then receives the message from young Joe telling him to meet at the diner. He's got the Beatrix carved into his arm. It's fucking cool. I like that. I thought it was interesting because we see that set up with Seth, and that's not necessarily something that I that young Joe knows that they're capable of. I thought it was interesting that it's something that happened to Seth, but we see young Joe use it. Like he maybe even knew about what happened to Seth and knew what they were capable of.
If somebody were trying to set that up, they would send an address, but instead he sent something that only Joe would know.
Right, exactly. God, Beatrix, that must have been a fucking pain in the ass to do.
Why couldn't you've had a smaller name like Deb or Sal?
Yeah, or like what about Al or Ed? Any of those would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But Joe prints out the map and receives the message to meet young Joe at Beatrix's. What's funny is when they were building this diner, real locals would stop off and be like, "Hey, when's this place going to open?" And they're like, "Oh, this is just a prop. Like this is just a set."
So can I get a coffee or what? Yeah.
Yeah. And just like Rian Johnson reaches over and takes one from Bruce Willis. Get a coffee, bitch. Get a coffee,
Who are you
bald-headed
anyway?
fuck. But young and old Joe finally meet face to face properly. They order the same meal, steak rare egg scrambled. I like that. So that's awesome. But things turn south quickly when young Joe tells old Joe to do what old men do and die. He's like, man, we've got to fix this. This is our life. No, that's your life. He's like, you got to live your life. Now it's my turn. And at first you're like, yeah, I mean, you're kind of fucking shit up, dude. Like that's not the whole deal. You're being kind of selfish. Like you've already had your 30 years and now you're trying to like come back and like renege on this contract that you had. When really like you knew what was going to happen. Like her getting killed is like an unfortunate like side effect of that. I'm not saying it makes it right or anything, but I just think it's kind of interesting how like he plays it up like, oh, this is our problem, and he's like, no, he's like, this is your problem, dude. He's like, this has nothing to do with me. What did you think about this first kind of encounter between the two of them, especially after we've had a lot of these like action scenes going on, see stuff kind of like die down?
It's nice to see them finally give us a little bit more background and character with them, because a lot of this really is just having to watch and insinuate their lifestyle, but now they're finally getting down and talking and putting some stuff kind of down on paper in a sense. And of course, they try and make a really prominent difference between their ages, but also trying to make you think they're the same person. So this is probably the main scene where you're probably studying both of them because they're just so close and talking a lot. But it's neat how he kind of sits down and explains everything that had happened and his whole motive behind it. It's interesting. So I thought this is a cool way to mix up the action in this. Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, and I love this whole thing of him being like, I can't look at you in the face. Your face looks backwards. I was like, that's cool. And what's super funny about this, I don't want to start talking about fucking time travel shit. We're going to sit here making diagrams out of straws all day and blah, blah, blah. Right. There's a deleted scene of them explaining all of this through a diagram of straws. It's literally the exact same thing. I was like, that's fucking hilarious.
Are you serious?
No, yeah, for sure. Wow. Literally, there's literally a deleted scene of that. I like this because it gives old Joe a chance to kind of tell like his side of things. He's like, just hear me out. He's like, I understand what you're saying, but just hear me out.
Right.
And even him talking about the memories, the memories are just probabilities now. They go clearer or cloudier as they become more or less likely. But then but when they happen, they're just instantly clear again. I can remember what you do after you do it. That's a fucking huge disadvantage, like I said. And he said,
you ever get a leg up on him?
Right. And he said, and it hurts, by the way. It's like, this is not a fun thing. But in this where he also starts talking about the wife. This is the there's this woman that you're going to find. You're going to meet her. He's asking her who, and he doesn't that's the thing is he doesn't want to tell him because if he tells him, that kind of ruins the whole thing. He's like, you'll avoid her or you'll do something to change this for me.
Yeah. And he doesn't want to have to worry about her not being in life anymore. You would think that that's already happened though, by him talking to him in this diner. I guess that's part of the time travel stuff, but moving on.
Right. No, I think that's super interesting. What he's saying, we would have had kids and we would have done this and we would have done that. And he's like, okay, well, show me your picture and I'll walk away. And he pulls the locket back and he's like, if she's so important, if she never meets you, you're the one who gets her killed. So just show me it now. And I promise I'll marry somebody else. I'll stay the hell away from her. And I mean, this scene gets intense. He's like, "You're such a fucking selfish little asshole. Like, why would someone sacrifice her life? Cut your high and mighty bullshit. I don't know. Shut your fucking child mouth."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
arguing
that's
with
fucking
yourself, literally.
Right? Yeah, literally calling himself, "You're fucking self-absorbed. She's gonna clean you up." And I mean, all this stuff is actually really great because it feels like Bruce Willis not phoning it in that he's been kind of notorious for doing, like the latter parts of his career, the later parts of his career.
Right.
And just this whole stuff of, you'll think maybe my past is clear, maybe everything's over with. And I love the line, 30 years from now is yesterday. I love that line. I just think that has such a cool ring to it. And this is where we finally see the story kind of unfold more with exactly what happens. The Gatmen come for old Joe, and she, unfortunately she startles one of them. They end up shooting her. And he's like, what do you do to this beautiful woman that saves your life? He's like, this is how you repay her. And a great shot when, that sounds terrible. A great shot, and it's the shot literally when she gets shot in the stomach. I'm like it shows the bullet hole, and then it just pulls up. And I meant like great cinema shot, not like, oh, good shot, Tony. You got it right in the navel.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is super important to what's been going on here. They're finally meeting face to face. They're going on. They're talking about the Rainmaker. They're saying, he's just kind of like forewarning him here. The Rainmaker came out of nowhere, and in 6 months he had control over the 5 major syndicates, and he did it alone.
Yeah.
Stories on the Rainmaker vary about him having a glass jaw, that his mom was killed, etc., etc. The first thing he did was start closing all of the loops. Flashbacks of Joe show him receiving the numbers that will reveal the identity of the Rainmaker. I love the scene of I love the scene of the guy giving him the numbers and just how fucking crazy the future looks. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Because
yeah, I mean, he's in his office and there's like a sports car sliding. It looks like Grand Theft Auto Online, Grand Theft Auto 5 Online outside is really what that reminds me of.
Fucking for real. Like, it's like, holy just shit, that's kind of terrifying looking.
Shit going on. Like, you could just walk down the street and get blown up. That's it.
Right, exactly. And this is where he said, they had vagrant purges, like all of this awful shit was going on. But old Joe produces a map that has the possible locations of the Rainmakers and reveals his plan to kill the Rainmaker to stop the murder of his wife. Young and old Joe argue again, with young Joe refusing to take responsibility for old Joe's life, instead demanding to have his own. A brawl ensues between the two, and the Gatmen arrive with Kid Blue. A shootout occurs, and old Joe escapes in the chaos, taking part of the map. Young Joe takes off on his bike, though. Bike through the cane, also taking a part of the map. I love this. I love this whole thing, this whole shootout of, young Joe shooting with the Gatmen, and old Joe gets away, and he's just kind of like, and they look at each other, and he's like, fuck, and like starts running. And he's like, no, wrong people. But this is where we finally get introduced to Sarah right here. I tell you, before we do that, are you cool to take a quick break?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, word. Guys, we will be right back with more coverage of Looper right after this.
guys. I just wanted to take some time to talk to you about Audible. Have you heard about Audible? It's some book thing that every other podcast is talking about. Basically, if you sign up, you can pick up our book titled Midnight Double Feature Doesn't Do Advertising by Colin Duncan, Sohaib Ali, Danny Harley, and Matt Vella. I'm just kidding. We don't have advertising, but I do want to plug our podcast for a sec. Just while we're taking a quick break here, we've got a few things that we just wanted to put out there for any newcomers, or if you're not a part of our growing community, maybe this could benefit you too. Firstly, I just want to let the newbies know about our episodes and the way Midnight Double Feature is currently structured. As you know, right now you're listening to one of our feature presentations. When we started the podcast, we basically built our show around feature presentations. These are movies that we choose to cover and basically go through everything in the movie that's worth talking about sequentially. These episodes are generally longer, and we're definitely looking at options to spice up our feature presentations by getting guests on. We also have the upcoming attractions episodes. Typically, these come out during the week and are much shorter than our feature presentations. These are hosted by Matt Vella and basically consist of a conversation between Matt and I about any movie news that's worth talking about, quick reviews of movies that are out there, and other hijinks. Finally, we have our special features. These are usually one-off special episodes that are mostly experimental and don't really have any specific definition. They could be a sit-down with a cast or crew member, a conversation between the hosts, or just a straight-up different thing that might not even relate to film. Before I let you get back to the episode, I just wanted to thank our listeners and supporters. We definitely couldn't have done any of this without your guys' constant support. If, for some reason, you're not part of our growing community, head to our socials. We've got 2 pages on Facebook, Midnight Double Feature, which is our main page and has our formal announcements, and we also have the After Party, which is where we post memes, news, and teasers of what's to come on Midnight Double Feature. We're also on Instagram, which is at Midnight Double Feature, and we're on Twitter, which is at MDFPod. Thanks again for listening, guys. Back to the show.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back. We are freshly squeezed, as we like to say around here, our motto.
It'll be the first thing that goes on a t-shirt.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, we're back with our second part of this coverage of Looper. Just jumping right back into it. This is where we meet Sarah. We meet Emily Blunt's character. Good Lord, Emily Blunt. Like, what an absolutely gorgeous. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt, what a gorgeous man. They have some absolutely gorgeous babies. Jesus Christ.
They don't actually do it, right? It's a movie.
What?
We can talk about it later. I'm sorry
just...
for the trouble. Man, she's got an awesome range. It seems like she likes playing these roles where she lives out in the middle of nowhere in a farmhouse and it's kind of has a shitty life. If you haven't checked out our Quiet Place episode, go check that out. I don't remember what number it is, but it's very similar to this. But that's immediately what I thought of. But I'm not going to lie, I had forgotten that she was in this movie until we started talking about it again.
Ah, okay. I just remember her because she's such a big part of the second half. But this is where we're introduced to her.
I remember her character. I just totally forget that it's Emily Blunt that plays her because she has her mouth. She has her mouth open all the time. Like, it's just like she plays a totally different character so well. It just adds on to her finesse as an actress. That's what I was saying. I was like, I totally forgot. Like, it was her as an actress. It was that character near the end. The kind of experiences Joe going through all this in a younger self.
Yeah, I mean, plus with that southern accent, she just slips like right into that. I'm like, dude, I can't. I mean, I would have guessed she was American like right off the bat. But we see her chopping away at this.
It's an okay Tennessee act. No, they're not in Tennessee anyway.
But yeah, this is where we see her chopping away on the stump with that axe. Also see her enjoying that invisible cigarette. So it's just kind of right there, longing for, like either something you used to do or a life you used to have, like kind of thing is what I took away from it. I thought it was an interesting character choice. At first, I was like, this is kind of dumb. And then when I kind of thought about it, it's like, well, it's a great visual thing. It just kind of tells you right away that this is somebody who wants something that they can't have, or something that's bad for them, or they kind of long for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that shows that she has a level of intelligence about her own humorous self, about just doing that in general and nobody else around.
Right.
She's just making herself laugh. It's just an interesting trait to have as a person.
For sure. But after seeing something in the cane, she takes up her shotgun and threatens an outsider in the fields. While that's going on, we've got Kid's Blue's hand is broken for failure. That is fucking. He's like, give me the gun, and it just the way he puts the gun up and his hand's shaking, he's all dramatic. And Jeff Daniels just grabs the gun and just slides it over to him. I'm like, it's just everything is menacing, dude.
Well, we were talking about earlier that he feels like he's just going to go nuclear. I'm quoting myself, I guess, like a selfish asshole. But when I was saying earlier, that, like, there's any point he could go nuclear, like that kind of escalates right here. I love that part. How it just totally, it makes you totally scared of him.
Oh, hell yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
so scared, I'm stumbling even with the same sentence.
And just have nightmares about Jeff Daniels from Looper, like, coming out of your closet.
I hope not. Jesus. I want a nightmare. I mean, he doesn't look intimidating at all. Like, don't get me wrong. The still frames of him in this, if they had set photos, they would be like, is he a bad guy or is he the victim?
Is he some kind of mage? Like, what's going on?
Why does he look so scraggly? What's up with his robe anyway? I'm obsessed with his robe in this. Every time he's in this, I'm looking at what he's wearing.
Yeah, apparently this is all like the future clothing that people wear and shit, and he's just like, it's just comfort over, like comfort over style. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah, it's just like it's what the fuck ever at this point. Man, he picks up that ball peen hammer, and you can tell that maybe he already knew what was going to happen. Maybe he's heard of him doing that to people before, but he smashes the fuck out of his hand.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely like the precedent, because he says that to Joe. He's like, now, not going to break your hand. I'm telling you, that's not going to happen. Like he's like, he has to like super reassure him, because I'm sure there's a reputation that precedes him. But after Kid Blue's hand is broken, back at Sarah's farm, a vagrant terrifies Sarah as young Joe sweats out his withdrawals. Joe intervenes in the last second and scares the vagrant off before collapsing due to his symptoms and begs Sarah for water. Him fucking vomiting and shit. I was like, oh, man, like that's fucking like, oh, that's so believable and gross.
Yeah.
Sid emerges. This is her introduction to Sid. Sid emerges and gives Joe the water. Sarah collects him and takes him back to bed. And this kid is so fucking smart. He's like, is that guy a vagrant? Yes. No, he can't be a vagrant. Why? Because his shoes are too shiny. She's like, God, you're smart. Like, I mean,
incredibly observant. I mean, Emily Blunt is known for having these intelligent kids in these movies.
Yeah,
just
right.
them getting part of her intelligence, but that is super. That's a good observation from her kid that just notices that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, a story that I heard from this was that this little kid,
another story.
This kid who is fucking like tremendous in this, by the way. I love this kid, but he kept trying to pull Emily Blunt's top down like at lunch one day, and his mom was like, Sydney, like, don't, I think his name's Sydney or Pierce or something like that. She's like, don't do that, and blah, blah, blah. And Emily Blunt's like, why are you trying to pull my top down? He goes, just want to see him. Like, he was just like flat fucking out with her. She's like, oh my God. He was. Yeah, kind of like a little temperamental kid on set. So he's like fucking 5. You know, what are you gonna do?
I've never heard stories like that before, so maybe could have done better.
Yeah, this kid's a little creeper. He is gonna grow up to be the Rainmaker.
What's my line? What's my line gonna be? His shoes are too nice.
One thing I really like about this movie, too, is that it uses this narration to explain this world we don't really see all that much. It kind of keeps things mysterious. And I like the fact that the time travel isn't like super glorified, because it's not like the focus of the story.
They don't have some weird acid trip scene of him going through time. Like, that would be too much.
Right, exactly. One thing that I thought was super interesting is the fact that like Rian Johnson's dad is in this movie. Sorry, I've got something stuck right in my throat.
Just go back in time and redo this.
Right, just like loop myself. Sorry about that. But no, Rian Johnson's dad is like one of the security guards for like Abe and stuff, and you see Joseph Gordon-Levitt's parents at some point. I was like, oh, that's super cool.
He's known as the director that's like, hey, can my parents be in this? He's like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, like all the pictures of the babies when old Joe prints out the map are all Rian Johnson's nieces. I was like, God, there's like so many little Easter egg things he just throws in there.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, Sid emerges. Sarah takes Sid back to bed. And meanwhile, back in the city, the hunt continues for both young and old Joe. Old Joe hides in the city sewers and begins to have his memories replaced by young Joe's new memories. This is where we see him kind of like fighting to keep the memory of his wife alive. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
That's
he's clutching.
awful.
He's clutching that very interesting watch that he has constantly throughout the movie, and just concentrating on her and trying to remind himself the first time he met her. It's fucked up. Just, I mean, being on the cusp of losing a memory, like the only thing that you're fighting for, and then like realizing that it might just leave would be terrifying. So it's definitely a thriller in the sense.
Right, just the possibility of it just erasing from everything you know. Like, holy shit.
Right. I mean, you'd just be standing there being like, what am I doing this for again?
Yeah, why am I here? Why is there shit in my hair?
What are these
young Joe,
what are these mouth drops for? Like, oh, they taste terrible.
Young Joe awakens the next morning handcuffed to a cot in the barn. Joe and Sarah start the morning off bickering about their situation. I love that she's like put the gun down. He's like, I'm almost finished cleaning. Put it down. He just slams it. He's like, God fucking damn it. It's just so believable. Just the frustration of like, fuck off, lady.
Yeah.
Joe says he can't leave. It says that he just needs to stay here for a couple days and blah, blah, blah. I like this. I like this back and forth between them a lot. It's really good. They bicker about the situation. Joe shows Sarah the map, which contains the random numbers given to old Joe. And right away, she fucking opens fire on his ass. She just dumps him. Like, I was like, holy fuck. Like, that is not going the way that I thought it was.
Right.
Like that was fucking crazy.
These numbers are super, super important to you out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. And especially, God damn it, going back to that scene, I love the scene of the guy giving him the numbers before that hospital explodes. That is so fucking cool.
The Grand Theft Auto 5 scene where, I mean, there's like a sports car coming to a halt and them shooting grenades inside the building, screaming the numbers on a phone.
Right. But yes, Sarah shoots Joe.
That's her name now, Shara. She's Sean Connery.
Yeah, Sarah. I'll smack you right down. Sarah opens fire on young Joe and demands to know what the fuck she's doing or what the fuck he's doing on her farm. Joe reveals time travel, which Sarah already knows about, and explains she already knows about loopers and all this other stuff. Knows about and explains old Joe's plan to kill Sid and stop the Rainmaker. Sarah reveals the number is Sid's birth date and the hospital code. So that's quite a bit of you think he's going to be coming in with this like left haymaker of like, there's time travel and shit called. She's like, you mean loopers? He's like, oh yeah. She's like, oh yeah. By the way,
good job. Because I did not want to hear that explained again. She's just like, I know about them. They scary.
Right. She just like fucking, but then she comes back with this whole thing of like, oh, well, this is his birth date and blah, blah, blah. So she's got kind of like a key to figuring this out. And I was like, okay, so this is definitely the right kid.
It'd be cool if there was an alternate script. Somebody tried to pitch back to Rian Johnson, like them not approving his actual movie, being like, we'll only let you produce it with us if I can see a version like of this pitch being like, those are the winning lottery number tickets. Like, that's a winning lottery number and not having anything to do with like ending some like child prodigy that's going to grow up and be who you were talking about earlier.
I got to get the winning scratch out.
Give me two of them. No.
Yeah, oh, my God. Let me get two $20 jumbos. Old Joe carries out his plan to eliminate the possible Rainmakers, but not without guilt and remorse. Sarah and Joe begin to trust one another, and Sarah forbids Joe from talking to Sid. She also calls him a pussy while digging the shotgun slugs out of his back.
Yeah.
That's a great scene of Bruce Willis like shooting that kid, and it's horrible, and at the same time it's
terrible.
It's terrible, but it's a great scene because they at least give him something. He's not totally cool about having to do this, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If it's like, hey, you go back in time, let's say you have to go back in time and kill 3 kids, and you stop Hitler, or you stop the guy who shot JFK, or you stop all these different events. Like, would you do that? And it's like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess. Like, fuck. I mean, if it saves, it's kind of like that whole greater good thing, which is just interesting. I don't want to, that's like some moral philosophy shit that gets real fucking heavy.
It's some of those just weird, like, subconscious strings that get tugged while you're going through this movie, right? Because you start thinking about, like, man, if I had to go back and kill somebody, who would it have to be? Would I ever do it?
Exactly.
Of course, considering the circumstances, you said somebody like Hitler. I'm sure that this discussion gets talked about probably once a week at least.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that night Sid calls Joe. Sid calls Joe instead, and they set up the means for communication. Sid displays an insane intelligence for his age. He also wants a gun like Joe's to stop the bad things from happening. It is also revealed that Sid's real mother died and that he wasn't strong enough to stop it. Sid also says Sarah is not his real mom and a liar. The hunt continues in the city for old Joe. This is super interesting too. This thing was said. I love that. She's not my mom. She's a liar. Like, he's just so flat with like what he says. It's eerie, man. It builds so much that creepy fucking kid character.
Right, exactly. Plant seeds for later whenever you end up learning who he is. You're just like, oh, that dick.
Yeah, that fucking bitch. Joe reveals the communication device the next morning to Sarah, who questions him about talking to Sid despite her request. He attempts to talk to her about Sid, but the conversation is shut down immediately by Sarah. Sarah and Sid begin to argue about Joe and Sid's incredible. Sarah and Sid begin to argue about Joe, and Sid's incredible TK powers are revealed, causing Sarah to hide in her safe room. What did you think about that fucking scene? You're not my mom. You're a liar. Stop lying to me. I'm like, holy fuck, kid. Take it down a notch. Yeah. God damn. You're going to go Dark Phoenix on all of us. Jesus.
That's kind of what that reminded me of. It's, we were talking about earlier, if they didn't have the PK thing in there, I'm not quite sure how that would work out for his character right now. But I don't know. At this point, you start kind of wondering, like, if it is more along the lines of, like, gosh, if I feel like if you were to explain that this is one of the most prominent pieces of the whole movie, it almost kind of sounds like a superhero movie, right?
Yeah, totally.
Just without, and then like, oh, by the way, there's some time travel involved. Like, you can almost re-explain this movie like that, the way that becomes so important.
Yeah, to kind of like flip the genre, like take it more from a superhero perspective. That'd be actually super interesting. I mean,
I guess because I had perceived this so heavily as a time travel thing that whenever this happened, I was almost eye-rolly. But I mean, I guess you kind of have to settle with this. Definitely, like the story, he wrote it to have its own set of rules, and it's totally its own universe. Whenever they started introducing like the TK, all right, do you have the TK? Do you have TK? Like immediately you start kind of having to think that this is a little bit more not. So I'm explaining the reason why it feels so unrealistic and why that's interesting in this. Of course, it's a fiction. I'm saying all that because this movie is shot and makes it feel like it's so real, though. Like it almost has like a Nolan look to it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh no, yeah, for sure, for sure.
I don't know who the cinematographers are in that, but like this feels like a Christopher Nolan movie the whole time because they feel so grounded and real. But then you have to deal with like telekinesis and stuff, and it makes it look a lot more believable than other movies have done in the past.
Right, yeah, because it's simple and it's subtle. It's not people moving mountains and bridges and shit. Like it's small stuff. But yeah, this whole thing with Sid, I thought was fucking awesome. Just that explosive rage. I mean, like the wind starts pushing her hair in a room, like with no doors or windows open. I'm like, oh shit. Like it's not just like he's picking shit up and moving it around. Like he's just like constantly stirring the room. Like, holy fuck. Like that's terrifying. But back in the city, old Joe hunts down the second Rainmaker child, which in a twist happens to be Susie's daughter. What the twist?
The twist.
I was like, holy shit, that was actually a nice touch. I mean, what are the odds? But at the same time, it's like, fuck, man, you thought you had it bad the first time killing that kid. It's about to get a hell of a lot worse. Like, fuck, that is such an interesting way to go. And it is extremely coincidental, but whatever. It's a movie. I don't mind it. It's
at first you're like, is that the same woman? It's kind of, yeah, it's definitely all fucked up either way. I mean, when he practically collapses when he's still in the area of the scene after committing that the first time, which again would be just such a crazy conversation to try and justify it. I mean, either way. And you just see him just struggling with it in the first place. And then like, he's just like, God, this couldn't get any worse. And then he shows up and there's actually some connection to this next one.
Right, exactly. It's like a personal investment. Sarah is surprised by a visit from one of the Gat men. I think this is Jesse, I think is his name, who intrudes and very subtly intimidates Sarah while searching for the Joes. Very subtly, with sarcasm, by the way. He is a total fucking prick. The Gat man asked to come inside for a glass of water and search the house. Young Joe and Sid find refuge in the hidden tunnel under the property. I love like Sid on the stairway, and he does the finger gun thing, and he's just like, he kind of furrows his brow. He's like, come on, motherfucker, blast this guy, man. He's like, you want me to do this shit? I'll fucking do it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Hold my shit.
Right, exactly. I love Sid's acting right through. This kid is fantastic. But they go and they hide in the hidden tunnel under the property. Joe opens up about his early life being sold to a panhandle gang by his vagrant mom. He escaped and dreamed of killing the men and setting his mom free. I'm sorry, what were you, a slave on fucking like a slave on Tatooine and your mom get picked up by Tusken Raiders like later on? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, I was like, dude, this reminds me so much of fucking Attack of the Clones. It's like, wait, hold on. It's like, so you went back and escaped got your mom from slavery and blah blah blah. It just kind of made me laugh. If he'd have just started slipping into like, and I had a sister somewhere that I lost and I can't seem to find her. She's a twin.
Yeah.
But oh wait, no, I got Anakin and Luke all swapped up. God damn it! Look at me.
It's okay.
I'm so unprofessional.
Hey, bud. Hey, look, you tried.
Yeah, I'm over here questioning my time travel existence right now. I'm like, yeah, sorry, I got my Star Wars swapped
you're getting all the Star Wars stuff, but it's okay.
It's like my brain only has so much room. Like something has to go out. Like, when's my niece's birthday? Fuck. Now I can't remember. But
hi, honey. What's your name again?
Makes me think of that Family Guy. You are going on, fellas. Will soon, but
good one.
But Kid Blue tracks old Joe's whereabouts. Sarah and Joe finally bang. It's so subtle, and it's so fucking great seeing her. She just kind of like, runs her hand up her thigh like a little bit. She's kind of like not really biting on her finger or anything. Just kind of like puts her fingers to her mouth, and it's all super subtle, and I like that. And when he gets in the room, she's standing up like she's about to fucking tackle him. Like she's like, I expected him to open the door, and she was just like, just come running at him and fucking deck his ass.
This is just a movie about Emily Blunt beating him up.
Yeah, it's like Emily Blunt is the water boy.
But she's in the movie.
Yeah, definitely. She finally has that fucking real cigarette. I'm like, you fucking get that dick. You get that goddamn dick. Like that's, and I like it. He's not in love. They're not, oh, well, I'm going to stay here and be a father figure to Sid. No, she wanted to fuck. And he's like, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely a drop dead gorgeous woman. Like, holy hell. We've seen
everything else they have going on in this world and time. I mean, what else is there really to look forward to?
Right. She's like, fuck it. Let me just get some dick. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this is she enjoys her cigarette. Afterwards, Sarah opens up about her life with Sid and her sister dying. She admits that she gave him up to her sister so that she could go live her ridiculous life. Sarah vows to always keep Sid safe and to not let him get a look in his eye like all the men in the city. I'll never let him be lost. Super. I mean, awesome. It's so great to see that character who's just been unrelentingly, calloused. It's nice to see that person finally kind of let something down and talk about themselves a little bit. It's first that she said anything really about herself a whole lot.
Right.
So I definitely like this scene a lot. It's cool. And it's not them cuddling. It's not them, like, oh yeah, here, I'll go get you a snack.
And I think, and probably not, and of course not to this same storyline at all, but we've all met people that you feel like or like this, that you've had to work next to or something that just never open up about anything. So, that's a good way. It's relatable, I feel like, for her to finally open up to him.
Oh, for sure. The next morning, Jesse the Gatman returns, and Joe begins to bargain for his life with him. Luffy's just sitting downstairs like, hey, Joe. And she's like, Jesse, what are you doing here? Like, he's kind of like, hello.
Can I help you? You want some waffles?
Yeah. He just walks down in a robe. He has his hair up in curlers and like drinking a cup of coffee. He's like, good morning, Jesse.
That's a big damn gun.
Yeah, he begins to bargain for his life, and basically this is where he finds out it doesn't matter even if he kills old Joe or not. He's still going to be hunted after no matter what. So it's just kind of like a moot point at this time to still like try and kill old Joe for, getting your life back and all this other stuff. They already said it's beyond that point, basically, which is important to note for him because that's kind of been his character motive, and now that's gone. So it's like, well, right. Okay, well, what the fuck do I do now?
Right. There's going to be an infinite amount of people that are coming towards you.
Right. Yeah. As they begin to leave, Sid appears and is startled by the man's gun, causing him to spill down the steps. Sid unleashes his TK force, turning Jesse into man pudding. Joe arrives at Susie's to kill her child, but is ambushed by Kid Blue, who tases and captures him. Yeah, I coined that term, by the way, man pudding. That's just like, he's literally...
Glad you didn't coast over that, because I wanted to come back to that.
He's literally just like pulling that guy from the inside out. I'm like, oh my God.
Yes. And like not in a quick shredding manner. Like it looks like it's coming out as like half solid, half liquid.
Right, exactly.
It's a brutal death scene. Like that's probably one of the more like stark, I think like scenes we see with some shit like that happening. And to like that detail is pretty cool too.
Right. I mean, and her tackling Joe out the door, and Joe's face is like, what the fuck? And as soon as they get out the door, the house and the windows just fucking boom, everything blows out. It's like, holy hell.
You can tell. That is like, so. I mean, is that why she didn't have any lights on whenever we first see this? Like, she's just in a really dark kitchen, and she obviously has technology. She just finished fixing this like crop duster, and then she ends up like not having the lights on. You think it's because he's done shit like that before and blown the lights out? Because she looks super, she like knows what she's doing when she grabs him and runs out the door already.
Yeah, like he can get pissed and like overload them and just blow bulbs.
Right.
She's like, we've gone through $900 in light bulbs. I'm about to start making fucking candles if you don't cut this shit out.
Listen here, we're not making enough money off this corn to keep bringing in these light bulbs.
Yeah, I will take away your fucking night bright. I swear to fucking God. Joe is pissed off at Sarah's choice not to tell him about Sid's powers, and he takes off into the cane to find Sid, covered in blood and scared. This kid apparently in real life hated this fucking shit, hated the corn syrupy blood type mix, and was just like genuinely upset by the end of it. Was like, I don't want to do that anymore. And they were like, all right, you don't have to. And like the director, Rian Johnson, he actually put like fake blood all over his face, like trying to make him feel better and stuff. Like, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Just trying to make this 5-year-old kid to like really feel like in the moment. I was like, that's kind of cool. Relate to them. I was like, that's interesting.
Right. And also it's just like forced child labor. They're like making this kid be sad so that his acting's more authentic in this scene. It's great thinking.
It's better than what Alfred Hitchcock used to do. He literally had a kid, and he gave the kid a puppy, and then came back in the room, took the puppy away down a hallway, gave it to somebody else, and just shot a gun up in the air. So the kid thought that they took this puppy, gave it to him, dragged it back out, and shot the dog. And this kid fucking lost it. I was like, holy shit. And they gave the kid the dog after it, whatever. But still, I was like, holy fuck, that's how they got the reaction. I was like, holy shit.
Here you go, little Jimmy. Here's your dog, the money we promised you, and a lifelong of scars.
Yeah.
Emotional scars.
Do you know how to load a .38 revolver?
You know how many therapy sessions that money we just paid you with can get you?
Abe and his men arm up to find and kill young Joe when suddenly Kid Blue arrives with old Joe in his capture. However, old Joe breaks free and begins a kill rampage through Abe's compound, eventually finding and killing Abe himself. This is really like our only like super action-y like thing. Like, and it's not even really. I mean, it's a little over the top. He gets the P90 and that, incredibly fast, like submachine gun and just annihilates all these guys.
I remember those guns in some of the James Bond and 64 games.
Oh yeah, dude. I played with those a little bit, like the Call of Duty games and stuff too. But I don't mind this scene. I think you do need a little bit of action here, kind of pick things up a little bit. We're also getting rid of Abe, the Gatmen, like the Loopers, all of this stuff. So in order to leave that behind, I think we kind of need something big here, because the end of our movie is not an action-packed like thrill ride. It's a very, very simple thing.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get a very simple ending, non-super actiony, but then also you do get kind of like a more complicated gun working kind of like action ending at the same time.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of shit that they need to tie up in this one, and so they gotta start tying it up at some point. And I mean, this definitely is a very important aspect of the whole movie, but you still have to deal with them just dealing with each other. They aren't even at that point yet.
Right, exactly.
And that's, I guess, assuming that they're going to live that long, but we spoiled knowing that the movie runtime was so long that there's no way that there's that much more for them to talk about,
Right. Well, I mean, speaking of people fucking living through shit, Kid Blue still alive. Kid Blue wakes up, finds everybody dead, and he's on his fucking like 14th life.
Right. Yeah.
Old Joe
that is the guy that like that is definitely a unique character in the sense that most of these people, like in all of these other type of movies, would have been killed immediately by the crime boss. They'd have been like, I'm not putting up with you.
Yeah, somehow this guy has survived like a fucking rat on a ship during the bubonic plague.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? This guy is just barely scraped through, like surviving.
Rat on the ship. And
Old Joe makes his way to Sarah's farm, but is interrupted by young Joe. Old Joe tries to bargain, but is shot at by young Joe, and Kid Blue crashes the party, but is finally killed once and for all by young Joe.
Yeah,
thank God, dude.
Uppercut shot. I don't know how else to call it, but you know what I mean? He's like, that's a brutal shot.
Oh yeah, where he just like erased the left side of his head, just like fucking nothing.
Yeah.
Because I can only imagine what Kid Blue looks like lying over there. Like God, sometimes when I'm at
dimmed whenever it goes past that part, they don't even show it.
Dude, one thing when I'm at work and I'm on my little electric ride, sometimes I think about these motorcycles from Looper. I'm like, this is what this shit reminds me of, or like the Darth Maul motorcycle from Phantom Menace.
Yeah, good reference. Yeah, they're definitely very similar. I love all the future depictions of motorcycles, because we're motorcycle riders and then owners, and it'd be neat to see. Like, I think about the Star Trek that we did so many episodes back, where in the very, very beginning, Chris Pine is driving this motorcycle that almost practically doesn't have any like rims on it. It's pretty neat.
I'm sorry, where are we at? Oh yeah.
So they get into this crazy gunfight in the road where they need to tie up the Kid Blue part of the story as well and just get that shit out of the way. But he takes a beating. But then it's just between Joe and Joe.
Well, yeah, because I love, basically old Joe's like, have fun with your fight, and just leaves and goes after the kid.
Right.
But yeah, he eventually he catches back up to them. Sid ends up flipping the car over with his TK, which I think also in turn, no, that's later on. Sorry. But yeah, he takes off for Sid and Sarah. Sid flips the truck over, forcing them to escape on foot. As Old Joe opens fire on them in the fields. He is successful in wounding Sid in the jaw, which unleashes his rage once again. Suspending Old Joe and Sarah in the air, young Joe shows up barely in the nick of time to see the standoff between Sarah, Sid, and Old Joe. I like the fact that when he goes all fucking Super Saiyan after getting shot in the jaw, not only does it pick them up, that shockwave flips the fucking truck that like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's in, which we've also failed to mention that they've unloaded his silver from his apartment, by the way, which is kind of an important thing. They've loaded it into the truck, and this is basically just the vehicle that they were riding in, that Bruce Willis, or that they had at Abe's compound. Bruce Willis gets it and goes out there and gives it to Joe and tells him to fuck off, and get out of here, and gives him one last chance to live his life before this thing pops up again. This fight pops up again, But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much here, like right at the end. I've got this pulled up. I thought this was like such an awesome line to end this on. He's got them all suspended in the air, and we just all freeze frame. Then I saw it.
Sorry, before you deliver that really cool thing, because I know there's something we skipped over there. Yeah, whenever younger Joe is driving up, seeing this happen, it's a really bitchin' shot where he sees practically this like dust wave, shockwave coming out of that cornfield, where like the kid is just going like ape shit. I think that's actually a really cool shot. He's driving that truck, and it's like all this shit starts coming through the windows and everything because it's just so strong. It's neat. That would be like a cool thing to see, honestly.
God, I could imagine if this Sid kid had a fucking baby with like 11 from Stranger Things. Like, holy fuck, this kid would just annihilate everyone.
It would definitely be an absolute superhero movie then, probably.
Oh my God, just like rip the world in half. Then I saw it. I saw a man who would die. I saw a mom who would die for her son, a man who would kill for his wife, a boy angry and alone, laid out in front of him the bad path. I saw it, and the path was a circle, round and round, so I changed it. What do you think of this ending? What do you think of this guy's self-inflicted gunshot wound that he does to wrap all this up?
There's so many movies now that are trying to do something really unique by sometimes like killing one of the main characters in the very end just to kind of be dramatic. I'll be honest, sometimes it doesn't turn out that good, or it doesn't turn out that good of a twist. You're just like, that's stupid. They just did that to be dramatic. I had a tiny piece in my head that was like, one of these two Joes is not going to make it out of this. But then when you kind of use Rian Johnson's version of time travel to make this movie definitely much more entertaining, it's you end up having this pretty killer ass twist. I thought it was pretty cool, honestly.
You see, it threw me through a loop at first, but I mean, I really liked it. You don't see a whole lot of movies where the answer to the problem is suicide. I was like, wow, okay, that's interesting. But it's not even really suicide's not even the right term. It's more of like, it's way more of like self-sacrificial. It's not just, I'm just killing myself to kill myself. There's like a large reason behind it, and where we get a version of Joe who would murder children to save a woman that he loves. We have another version of Joe who will give his life for some kids and for a kid and a woman he barely knows. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that helps also with their physical appearance as well. Like sometimes people are like, oh, it doesn't look like Bruce Willis and blah, blah. Well, it's not him. This is a very, very different person. So I don't mind it being a physically different looking person. But yeah, I mean, that's it. Joe shoots himself right in the fucking heart with his blunderbuss. Old Joe disappears right away. And I mean, that's pretty much it. They find young Joe's silver scattered in the road. He's laying there with his pocket watch. I like she kind of runs her fingers through his hair, which is kind of like what he was talking to Susie about like earlier on. Right.
Do it while I still have hair.
Right. One thing. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, man. That's pretty much Looper. That just about wraps it up. But there is something I want to pitch to you real quick.
Okay.
I don't think there's no way that Bruce Willis can be the assassin and the victim of this thing at the same time, because when you think about it, so the Rainmaker already exists when, like, let's say everything goes according to plan. We get our story with Old Joe. Old Joe never goes back in time to create the Rainmaker. The Rainmaker already exists in Old Joe's time. He didn't have to go backwards in order to create the Rainmaker. I think something else completely has made this Rainmaker, and that it is Sid, but I don't really know what those events are. I mean, we don't really see anything outside of Looper. So I bet good money that not only does Sid become the Rainmaker, but that all of this stuff Joe was actually kind of right about. He's like his methods, I'm not agreeing with, but like what he's saying, I agree with, like the fact that this kid is just dangerous for whatever, he's been traumatized and abandoned, and maybe it's like too late for him. But the thing that ultimately gets me is the fact that this cannot exist. Like this whole thing with the Rainmaker and stuff can't exist, with the theory that Joe has created it. It just doesn't work because it already exists in a timeline where Joe never goes back. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and like, I'm telling you, there was probably like 3 major things that happened throughout this whole thing that I would probably have trouble re-explaining unless we went back and played it again. But like, where there's times where it's like, wait a minute, if they're showing us that like he gets memories from the younger version of himself, why is the younger version getting the old memories of himself? Like, and even like saying it right then, I feel like that doesn't make any sense. I'd have to elaborate, but there's a lot of little things that happen here that it just totally made me. You totally have to let go of like the time thing really in this. It almost is kind of like a fun version of time travel, just to make everything make sense and be a little bit more theatrical, and I'm cool with that.
Do you want me to tell you what I what I think happened? Actually,
no. Do we have any thoughts on what do you think happened?
What I think happens is, because she talks about Sid was my baby, I abandoned him. He doesn't really call her mom. He considers the other woman his mom, the sister. So what I think happens is, we've got Sid saying, I wasn't strong enough to stop it. I want to carry a gun. She was killed. Not like, oh, she died. She was killed. I think that's also like interesting, like exactly the words that he used. You've also got Emily Blunt, who knows about loopers already, which is interesting. Most people don't already know about like loopers. Right. So what I'm thinking is that, yes, the stories about the Rain Man are true. He does have a synthetic jaw. His mom was shot and killed, but his mom was shot and killed by a looper who's not Bruce Willis, because people are like, the thought is that Bruce Willis shoots Emily Blunt, which creates the Rainmaker. What I'm saying is that unknown looper shoots his quote unquote aunt, the woman he thinks is his mom. That's what kills her, and he's already been started down the path. Like when his aunt/mom died, that's what turned him into the Rainmaker, because he even says, I wasn't strong enough to stop it. Like, it's not like she died of a disease. It sounds like she was murdered. So the more and more I think about that, the more and more it makes sense. Like, the stories are true, but you're just applying this in the wrong way. And I think all the pieces are there. He considers, his aunt, his mom. You're not my mom. You're a liar. He talks about his mom dying and not being able to let her stop it. It explains why Emily Blunt would know anything about loopers. It ties up like a lot of stuff, and it explains why he's closing all the loops as well. It's kind of like revenge. He's closing this to kill all the loopers and stop them from going back and killing his mom. And I just thought that was super interesting. And to me, like, I think that makes a better movie, honestly. I'm like, dude, if there was like a twist in there and he killed Sid and nothing, what you're
saying is it practically changed nothing.
Right, yeah, it didn't. It changed absolutely nothing. Like, Sid will still be the Rainmaker.
Right, but you're saying, like in the instance that they had a sequel, I was just saying, like, and it turns out that really, you're saying effectively, that means he did nothing to prevent it. Joe's character.
Right.
The sequel would just immediately be like, okay, well, what's next?
Well, because like right when the movie ends, it's this very like kind of happy, bright sounding piano, and we see the shot of them out in the field or whatever, and then it cuts to Sid in his bed, and it immediately takes like a few darker, lower notes, and I was like, oh, okay, we have a music change. We have the last shot of this little kid going to bed, with this shot like right on top of him, and I was like, this is fucking weird. Like, I feel like this is trying to tell me something. So I think either way, he definitely becomes the Rainmaker, but that's just my kind of theory. I think that the stories about him are right in the movie, but they're looking at it like the wrong way. I feel like, and that's just me personally. Like, I just think all the parts are there for that. I'm surprised, like, I haven't really read anywhere about somebody else putting those pieces together like that. I was like, wait, all of it's right there. I do have one listener comment. I've got one from Nathan Burkhart on Facebook. Awesome. He said, I have an irrational fear of amputation, so this movie seriously damaged my calm straight off the bat.
He just starts having a panic attack 30 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, no, this was a terrible idea.
Hey, if you've got this far and listen to this, Nathan, thanks for sticking in there. But yeah, it freaked us fuck out too. That's terrifying.
Oh God, yes. I like
that. That's always a cool twist on. That's always a cool twist on, like, what would the mafia be like in that type of universe where there's TK and all that other bullshit. Like, that's what the mafia is just like. Oh, start cutting off his limbs. Both of them will start figuring out real soon.
Right, like how they would use that shit to their advantage. But yeah, I tell you what, just closing thoughts real quick. I really enjoy this movie. I love it. It's one of my favorite sci-fi time travel movies. Super fucking underrated movie. I think a lot more people should see this movie. And I'm glad that they never really tried to make a sequel or a television series or a franchise out of it or anything like that. It's a one and done, and I love those. And it's the kind of thing that the replay value on this is really high, because you start going back and looking at all these little mysterious clues that they have and stuff like that, and kind of trying to, piece things together. But I would definitely say this is like a 9 out of 10 for me. I fucking love it. It's not quite perfect. I think that there's some stuff. He does look a little goofy in the makeup sometimes. There is some like time travel paradoxical things that I just don't love. But all in all, I would say that this is a damn near like perfect movie. It's fucking great. What do you think?
I like it a lot. I'd probably, just starting off with the score, probably maybe say like 8.5 out of 10. I guess having to grasp around that there's so much more about like some of the TK stuff as opposed to some of the time travel. Well, it's like, not that I really care either way, which, I mean, it's his script, he can write it however, but I guess it's weird because you sort of get lulled into a lot of the time piece of it, that it does kind of take you off guard that some of the other, I guess, telekinetic and like fictional pieces of it are really like that whole thing that really build that whole universe. But it is very unique in that sense, and it definitely like carves out, like you said, like a very particular like sci-fi time travel like niche in this thing that's usually just like revisited over and over and over again. Even in your favorite movie, The Time Traveler's Wife. So it's cool to see like a little bit of a change up in that whole like thing, just by him being like, well, you know what? If it is going to be some really crazy time travel rules, there's some people that do TK too. Like that's kind of a neat way. It's just I guess it ends up having so much more to do with the movie than I thought it was. So I kind of went into it thinking it was more like time travel, but either way, it's still pretty damn entertaining. They pick a really good cast for this. I think that all of them are pretty cool. I feel like I don't see Gordon Jason. I never get his fucking name right. Anyway, you never see him doing like a lot of like leading roles, So it's cool for him to kind of be one of the main characters in this. And of course, we always love when Emily Blunt shows up. When Bruce Willis clocks in, he's fun to watch and great and everything. So, really neat cast and super original story. Some of the things you're just kind of like, why would that work? Why wouldn't that work then? But I don't know, 8.5 out of 10. Pretty damn entertaining. I love how original it is. That's the majority of the score.
Well, hell yeah, dude. I'm super glad that we covered this. I'm glad that we got some time travel down, some of the headier time travel out there that there is. Like, it gets kind of complicated at points, but that's what's fun about it. I mean, I thought this was going to wind up being like a fucking 4-hour long episode.
There's just so much to explain. I mean, you bravo to you. You explained a ton of this stuff.
Well, yeah, I really do love this movie, and most of the time I was sitting here rattling off stuff just from like muscle memory. But yeah, I do. I really love this movie. I'm glad that we've gotten into some time travel. I'm glad that we've gotten into some Rian Johnson and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I really like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I remember him from Third Rock from the Sun when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed that show.
Yeah, that is great. That's a really funny show.
Not so much now, but when I was a kid, like it was fucking hilarious.
I guess I haven't gone back and rewatched it. That makes me think about that.
Yeah, maybe let some things lie where they lie. Maybe don't just leave it alone, Dan. No, I'm just kidding.
We got a backlog of shows that we were talking about earlier, so that's okay.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it. You can always find us on our socials. We're all at Midnight Double Feature on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us on the After Party connected to Facebook. We're Twitter at MDF Pod. You can also find us on YouTube. Shoot us an email, midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com, and make sure and stop by, rate and review us 5 stars on whatever listening platform that you're on. Danny, you want to bid these people a farewell?
No.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening.